That's how you get them to say yes.
Okay, welcome everybody. Samir, do you want to sort of kick us off and welcome us to your lovely facility?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Randolph. I'm Samir Sheikh. I'm the Executive Director and Air Pollution Control Officer here at the San Joaquin Valley Air District. And I just wanted to welcome all of our partners at the state agencies for being here in person, taking the time to speak on these really important topics. And we really appreciate you here in the Valley for being here. And we look forward to a productive discussion, again, on these really important issues. I also wanted to introduce, there's a couple of our board members that are here today, Dr. Pacheco Werner, as well as Vice Mayor Liz Nguyen from the city of Visalia. So I don't know if you want to say something really quick or, all right, if you don't mind, Chair Randolph.
We weren't sure what was going on. Well, welcome to the beautiful San Joaquin Valley, which you're in the northern part of, most of you. And we're just grateful that you're here to listen to our concerns and hopefully come to some great solutions for some of the challenges that we as the city and our ag community are facing right now. But I look forward to speaking to you during the public comment time. Thank you again for coming.
All right, well, welcome everyone. I'll take the liberty to introduce myself. I'm Ethan Elkind. I'm with UC Berkeley Law School's Center for Law, Energy, and the Environment. And I'm here to basically help facilitate and moderate the panel discussion that we'll have, and then the audience Q&A, which will take up most of the agenda today. And so just as a bit of a preview of things, we'll hear some opening remarks, and then we'll spend the bulk of the time. We have until 5 o'clock. We do have a hard stop at 5, really hearing from all of you. So we just greatly appreciate that all of you are here in attendance and look forward to your comments and questions on this really important topic. And just to be clear, what we're gathering here to talk about today, this is on Executive Order N2725. This is the first of 3 in-person meetings that the state agencies are holding to respond to the governor's executive order on basically what the state is going to do now on zero emission vehicles in the face of the congressional rollback of the waiver authority that the state has to set mandates for zero emission vehicles. So investigating some state strategies. This meeting today will help inform ultimately what the state puts together, what the agencies put together for the governor. And we will be recording the meeting, but this will be for note-taking purposes. So we'll be able to capture all of everyone's feedback during the discussion today, and again, have that help inform what's going on, what the ultimate report back to the governor will be. I mentioned we're stopping at 5 o'clock. We'll also take a break around 3 o'clock as well. I'll kind of, take the temperature of the room a little bit, or see if I got a notice that my car is being towed, then I'll definitely be taking a break. If you have to use the restrooms, just go out the door and follow the hallway to the right, and you'll see the restrooms down there. And so that's basically it for the housekeeping. When we start the facilitated part of the discussion and hear from all of you, I'll have some more sort of ground rules and process to advise on. But really happy that we could hear from Samir and from Vice Mayor Liz Nguyen. And I also want to see if we have David Santos here from Senator Caballero's office. I know he was potentially planning to come, but I don't know if we have David. All right, so no David. So I think we can launch into some official welcomes from the panel up here. So first I want to introduce California Air Resources Board Chair Leanne Randolph.
Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for coming and taking the time to be here. This conversation is really about how Californians can clean their air and continue to fight climate change, and how we can do that together, and how California can continue to make the progress that was started nearly 60 years ago when a bipartisan group of legislators and Governor Ronald Reagan created the Air Resources Board, created the state's bold and innovative actions to clean the air that have proven over and over and over again that these groundbreaking policies can be successful in protecting public health. It was a California scientist working at a California university and observing the severe effects of air pollution and its effect on Californians' quality of life who discovered what created smog and laid the foundation to systematically and effectively make progress on what at the time seemed to be an unsolvable problem. Since that time, our population has doubled, vehicle use has quadrupled, yet we have had the benefits of reducing many air pollutants by 75 to 99%. In the face of federal government policies that disincentivize clean vehicles and disincentivize clean electricity, we need doable and durable ideas to ensure that we still continue to get the emissions reductions we need to meet our national and our state air quality standards and to address climate change. It's a legal obligation, it's a moral obligation, and it's in our state's best economic interest to continue to tackle these problems. So today we'll have a dialogue on how best to meet this challenge and how best to move forward. This discussion will inform formal recommendations that will be delivered to Governor Newsom next month in response to an executive order that he issued in June. For this session, we're going to have a special focus on ideas and issues related to agriculture and trucking and the actions that will accelerate benefits to communities here in the Central Valley. We know that the agricultural community in the Central Valley has been a leader. We have seen significant reductions as a result of the farmer program and other programs, including our dairy digester programs to reduce methane and cleaner vehicles throughout the valley. And so we want to continue that progress, and we look forward to working with you all as we think about ideas that will make things, as I said, doable and durable. So that concludes my remarks. Looking forward to the discussion. Back to you, Ethan.
All right, thank you, Chair Randolph. Next, I want to introduce the California State Transportation Agency Undersecretary James Hacker.
Thanks, Ethan. Good afternoon. Like Ethan said, I'm James Hacker. I'm Undersecretary at the California State Transportation Agency, sitting in for Secretary Omishakin, who unfortunately can't join us, but sends his regards. I'm happy to be here today. I'm excited to see so many faces in the crowd, and I'm excited for the conversation that we're going to have today. As Ethan and the chair said, we're here to talk about the governor's recent executive order to identify ways to continue to drive progress on zero emission vehicles. Order comes at a critical time for us. Historically, we've had a strong federal partner, and now that federal partnership is changing, which sort of changes the context in which we're working, but not necessarily the goals or the path that we're necessarily on. So the question before us is, how do we move forward? How do we keep driving progress in sort of the new world that we find ourselves in? On the CalSTA side, we sort of ground our work in zero emission vehicles and what we call our core four, which are sort of the four overarching priorities that drive everything that we do. And for us, that's safety, equity, climate, and economic prosperity. And from our perspective, ZEVs sort of tick all four boxes because they give us an opportunity to sort of further our economic development, clean our air while still helping the state move forward and maintain a strong economy. So in terms of what we're focusing on here from CalSTA, I guess I'll lean forward a little bit. I sound a little quieter back there. Given sort of the legal direction that CalSTA has and sort of the legal authorities, we're the agency that oversees Caltrans, CHP, DMV, as well as other transportation-related entities. We've got really sort of four things that we're working on. So first, as an infrastructure owner, CalSTA is responsible via Caltrans and other entities for the construction, maintenance, and development of state-owned transportation facilities. That's the state highway system, state rail facilities, use of the state rights-of-way, which I think provide a good opportunity for some of the infrastructure that's needed for the zero-emission vehicle transition. As a large fleet manager, like I said, we oversee Caltrans. That's 20,000+ employees, 15,000+ vehicles. We have an opportunity to be sort of part of the market, driving that market transition. Just by dint of sort of the size of our workforce and the size of our vehicle fleet. As a funding agency, we spend a significant amount of money maintaining the state highway system, but we're also a major grant maker and sort of funding pass through to local transportation infrastructure. So we fund local streets and roads, local bridges, local rail lines, and sort of related transportation infrastructure, bus depots, transit stops, rest stops, what have you, via state and federal dollars that pass through us. And so that all gives us an opportunity to use some of those levers to shape some of that built environment in a way that sort of helps us drive this transition. And lastly, as a motor vehicle regulator, like I said, within our ambit is sort of the Department of Motor Vehicles, as well as the new Motor Vehicle Board, both of which have a regulatory role in terms of licensing the types of vehicles that operate, the rules at which they operate, and via CHP, things like weight limits, all of which have major implications for the use of zero emission vehicle technology. So following the governor's executive order and in consultation and partnership with CARB, GoBiz, and all of our other state partners, we've been working through each of these lanes. And from CalSTA, sort of the two main things that we're looking at as we're assessing our options and the policies we can work through are, one, what are the ways that we can lower the cost and make it easier to acquire, operate, maintain, and fuel a zero emission vehicle, or the zero emission fleet that we need out there. And two, what are our opportunities to, like I said, leverage some of those infrastructure assets that we have to sort of achieve that, to make that easier, to improve, to expand and accelerate the deployment of fueling and charging infrastructure statewide. This is a great opportunity to talk about those things and hopefully to think a little bit outside the box. So I'm very excited to be here. I'm excited to sit up here with our state partners, and I'm excited to hear from all of you this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Next, I want to introduce the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development Chief Deputy Director Emily Desai.
Thanks, Ethan, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Desai. I'm the Chief Deputy Director of the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, or GoBiz. I'm very glad to be with you this afternoon to talk more about the Governor's new executive order on zero emission vehicles, and to hear from all of you about additional actions that the state can take to protect our communities from air pollution while also creating jobs and accelerating our transition to a cleaner transportation economy across the state. GoBiz, our office, serves as the state's lead for job growth, for economic development, and business assistance efforts in what is now the world's fourth largest economy. Within our office, we have a zero emission vehicle market development team led by Heather Hickerson, who joins me here today. That office works to coordinate efforts across state agencies, collaborate with local jurisdictions, and incorporate industry needs into the decision-making processes to overcome barriers that help to advance the zero emission vehicle market. California leads the nation in zero emission vehicles. 1 in 4 cars is sold in California is a zero emission vehicle. 2.2 million ZEVs have been sold to date. Nearly 6,000 zero emission vehicle trucks and buses are also on California roads. But it's not just how many ZEVs are on our roads and our highways. California is also home to more than 54 zero emission vehicle manufacturing companies, but there is more untapped potential to grow that opportunity. In February, the governor released the California Jobs First Economic Blueprint, the first statewide economic strategy led by the 13 regions across California that identified economic priorities and opportunities for their communities that ultimately developed into the state plan. That state plan intends to drive sustainable economic growth, innovation, and access to good paying jobs over the next decade. The plan includes, of the 13 regions, 12 of those regions identified the clean economy as a priority sector. In 6 of those, zero emission vehicle technologies were specifically called out. This is an important opportunity to work with regional partners to advance these markets across the state of California. We've come a long way, but much work remains. And the importance of maintaining that focus is not just here in California, but the global implications as well. The Chinese industrial model, for example, which combines government financial support, long-term planning, aggressive innovation, means that China is dominating in the clean energy economy and it's dominating in zero emission vehicles. In order to maintain competitive domestic manufacturing here in the United States, we have to continue our focus on also advancing the zero emission vehicle market. Here in Fresno, we are looking forward to learning more from all of you about what we can do to advance and transition issues around heavy duty trucks as we move through communities and combating air pollution here in Fresno, which is has among the worst air quality in the country. We must ensure that we have agricultural vehicles and equipment that do the job better than today's comparable diesel technologies, and that they're available and affordable, because this community provides food not only for California, but for the country. As Governor Newsom often says, the future happens here in California first. This isn't due in large part to the state's most important asset, which is our people. So I'm here to listen. I'm here to hear from all of you. My hope is that this session will allow all of us to think and share how we can best advance our collective efforts. It's only by working together that we will deliver on that clean transportation future for all Californians. So Ethan, I'm glad to turn it back to you.
Right. Thank you so much, Emily. And last but not least, for the formal opening remarks, we're pleased to be joined here by Department of Consumer Affairs Deputy Chief at the Bureau of Automotive Repair, Clayton Leak.
Thank you, Ethan. As Ethan mentioned, I'm a deputy chief with the California Bureau of Automotive Repair. I'm also here representing our parent department, the California Department of Consumer Affairs. For those not familiar with the organizations, I'll give a real brief background. The Department of Consumer Affairs oversees 36 boards and bureaus that issue 3.4 million licenses across 280 license types. DCA's mission is to provide outstanding support services, oversight, and innovative solutions to boards and bureaus that regulate California professionals and vocations, so that through this partnership, all Californians are informed, empowered, and protected. Bureau of Automotive Repair is one of 36 boards and bureaus operating under the DCA umbrella. BAR's role is to regulate the automotive repair industry and administer the California Smog Check program. BAR's mission is to protect Californians through effective oversight of the automotive repair industry and the administration of the California Smog Check program. We're proud to be a partner in the state's zero emission vehicle adoption efforts. As a consumer protection agency and as the regulator of the automotive repair industry, we are here to pursue opportunities to enhance our commitment to consumer protection across the entire life cycle of zero emission vehicles. We believe the adoption of zero emission vehicles is critical to meeting California's air quality goals, and we believe that knowledge is power. Our goal is to amplify ZEV adoption messaging and outreach to stakeholders across the automotive repair marketplace. Ultimately, we believe that this will help consumers and other stakeholders across the automotive repair marketplace make more informed decisions that ultimately lead to better outcomes for all Californians. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
All right, thank you. And I just also want to acknowledge we have Air Resources Board Executive Officer, Dr. Stephen Cliff, up here in listening mode, silent mode. So unless we pull him out, but we'll see how that goes. All right. I also want to now acknowledge that we do have David Santos here from Senator Caballero's office. So David, if you wanted to come up and just say some welcoming remarks on behalf of Senator Caballero, that would be wonderful.
Test. Can you hear me? Okay, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. David Santos with Senator Ana Caballero's office. I'd like to thank the board for the invitation here today, delivering some remarks on our behalf. The state of California and partner agencies have worked tirelessly to ensure barriers to entry into the vehicle electrification space are minimal for residents and those in the agriculture and trucking industries. The benefits of zero emission deployment across our state and across industry sectors have continuously been reported on and confirmed. Today's listening session to explore our state's future electrification efforts is timely and relevant, given the ongoing threat that poor air quality continues to present people in the Central Valley and across California. 10 million Californians in the San Joaquin Valley and Los Angeles Air Basin continue to be impacted by asthma and other chronic conditions. The negative impact of air pollution echoes to influence the wait times at emergency rooms, the changes in our climate, and the reliability of our power grids. Now, more than ever, it is important to ensure our constituents' voices are heard. Public participation meetings like the one held here today are important to ensure the needs and voices of our constituents are heard in the efforts enacted after today's meeting. The perspectives of Californians will be codified into actionable legislative efforts, and I extend my gratitude to CARB, industry partners, and those of you gathered here today to ensure that these efforts are part of the conversation. Your participation will ensure California continues to lead by example and deliver on the promise to ensure future generations have cleaner air, and that our state continues to lead by example through pragmatic, innovative, and inclusive public policies. Thank you all very much for your time, and we look forward to the work ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So before we launch into the sort of open comment, facilitated discussion portion of the day, I do want to show instructions on how to access the Spanish translation for this discussion. So I'm going to ask that we can show that slide. And we'll just give that a moment to load up on the Spanish, not that one. We should have a different slide on Spanish translation. Just give this a moment. I want to make sure folks can access who need the language assistance. All right, there we go. Okay, so we'll leave that up there on the screen for a moment. So people who do want the translation assistance can access those instructions. All right, and then and while folks are looking at that, I'll go ahead and give some just basic procedural guidance for this facilitated part of the discussion. We want this to be a guided discussion. This isn't sort of just open session in terms of whatever comment you want to make. Hopefully we'll be able to cover all the issues, but we want to do so in a somewhat orderly, logical flow as best we can. I also just want to note, as I said at the outset, this is the first of 3 meetings. We're going to also have a meeting in Sacramento on Wednesday and then in Long Beach next week. But in addition to that, there will be a 4th online meeting on July 29th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And that will be online. So if you don't have, I'm hoping everyone will have an opportunity to say what they want to say today. But if your issue is not covered, if you don't have an opportunity to get your comment in, there's that meeting as well, which will be open for any additional comments. So just wanted to let folks know that. Otherwise, we'll be starting this discussion with a series of prompts. And then the hope is that we can have a sort of a bit of a dialogue amongst the commentators here. And we'll also have a mix of ways to provide input. So if folks want to speak verbally, we'll have a couple microphones floating. So just raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone. We'll also be doing some online prompts as well. And you can, if you have a phone, you can just submit some written comments as well in response to specific prompts. So we have a few of them teed up here, which I'll show in a minute. And because we're trying to keep this within topic, within scope, if someone gets up and starts to talk about something that's really out of place, I may need to take moderator's prerogative to just table that discussion and encourage you to submit that comment in a different format, not today, so we can keep a more guided type of discussion and hopefully make this more useful for all of you and for folks who need to take this input and incorporate it into ultimately a report for the governor and for the state. So I'll also just note that for this discussion, some of the key topics that we want to cover are agriculture and trucking to some extent. But of course, it'll be open-ended. So if your comment goes beyond that, that's okay, as long as it's within scope. The discussion in Sacramento will focus more on light-duty vehicles, and in Long Beach, we'll be focusing on infrastructure. But again, those issues are not necessarily out of scope. We just want to make sure we're able to cover the bases of agriculture and the trucking sector, particularly given the location here in the Valley. All right. So with that, if you could show my presentation screen, I want to start off with a prompt here for folks. And I hope everyone was able to, who needed it, was able to access the translation screen. All right. So the question here, just to kick things off, is what is the #1 action that you believe California can take to maintain momentum in the zero emission vehicle market? And you can use the QR code there to scan it, and you'll get an opportunity to fill out your response. You can also use the text message there. There's a text instruction, or you can join by the web. So I'm going to give people a few moments to go ahead, and then I'm going to click over. The responses will come in. We'll be able to see them. If we get a lot of responses, it'll bump down on the screen, but do rest assured that we are capturing these responses. So even if it doesn't show up on the screen, if it gets bumped down, we have a record of these responses. All right, we're getting a number of responses here. People can continue to weigh in. I think our presentation hopefully is on Zoom as well, though I don't believe we have Zoom attendees other than just to record the meeting, but it's there as well. Well, I'm noticing a few, long statement there. A few themes are emerging here. Incentives seems to be a big one popping out. And also infrastructure and grid needs. Those seem to be two primary themes that are jumping out. So, and again, we'll keep this going here. And other themes are emerging. I'm curious on those two topics of both infrastructure and incentives. Does anyone want to verbalize a comment on those two topics in particular? And we can pass the microphone. Yeah.
Thank you. Liz Wynn with City of Visalia, but also a board member of Cal Bands. And the agricultural sector and moving our labor forces around the valley has been particularly challenging in the EV field because there's just not infrastructure out there. The manufacturing has not kept up as well. Of an electric van that carries, 9 to 15 passengers only has about 120-mile range. And so that's difficult for our volunteer drivers who are also farm laborers to take, after a long day, to take another hour, hour and a half, or overnight to charge the electric vehicle. So we've had manufacturing issues as well. We've only have 20 of the 300 EVs that we've ordered available. And we've had many manufacturers go out of business that we had contracted with to provide us vehicles. So the infrastructure in the rural areas is really difficult. And I know it's difficult for the farming community too, and I'm sure they'll address that themselves. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Vice Mayor Nguyen. Yeah, other thoughts on that theme, both incentives and infrastructure needs? Question?
Hi, Liz Perez. I'm a member of the Norfolk Rancheria Mono Indians, about an hour away, maybe less. I drove up from San Diego to be here specifically for this because in the Central Valley, the tribes here are significantly left behind. And that is mainly because these incentives, there's a huge gap in regards to education, awareness that they even exist. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important that we have set-asides, state set-asides, so the tribes can have that opportunity to fill those gaps, because it's really important. You're talking about rural areas here in the Central Valley and California in general. And with that, you have the tribes that are there. So why not set aside funds to ensure that these tribes are getting the access to apply for these different grants and incentives, and even a step further, the technical assistance that it'll take.
Thank you. Yeah, other thoughts in the back there?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Dr. Randolph and Dr. Cliff. And my name is Manuel Cunha, President of the Nisei Farmers League and also the African American Farmers of California. First, on your thing, I like this, but I hate it. I think we need to have a physical human being talking from the staff about the various stuff. I'm not a person of the electronic key world, sorry. I like to hear from your staff so we can ask your staff questions and have that type of dialogue. I don't approve of this, but that's okay. My friends back here are helping me get through. I would like to make a recommendation on this issue, is that you come back to the drawing board with us, industry, including my neighbors. I ship 47% of my product to the Port of Oakland. The Port of Oakland is a very important issue for us, along with fueled trucks that make it to the port upon the time in which we have to deliver those containers that have to go out on those ships. But I think we need to sit down in the room and start over, at least in some parts of this. The infrastructure is a failure. I can't get packing houses built at all because PG&E's out 10 years. And this has been going on, and apparently it's not visible enough by the agency. I understand the governor's motivation. That's fine. But when you can't shove it onto me, where it works, it's fantastic for electrification. My trucks that come in from New York go to 3 or 4 different packing houses. When they enter this state line, they have to get to those packing houses, go pick up the fruit and head back to New York. Unless they have one heck of a long electric extension cord, it ain't going to happen. So we have those issues. But we do have some real problems with the zero emissions, even with our rural communities. The infrastructure, the wiring of houses, how to hook up a truck, even the cost of an electric truck is not feasible for many of our independents. When the rule came out, we lost a lot of independent truckers. And for some of those people that aren't involved in that, many of these workers were in the fields for 15, 20 years, had the opportunity to advance, save them enough money to buy a tier 3 truck. Several years later, you made them get rid of that truck. As some of your staff have quoted sometimes, if you can't buy an electric truck, you shouldn't be in the business, coming from ARB staff. That's fine, but I don't believe in that. So I would recommend, Dr. Randolph, that we sit down and talk about some of these major areas because of the waiver issue. And I think we sit down and really go through it with agriculture and my ports and my truckers and our warehouses. They make the system work. There's one thing all of you have to have in this room is food. And where does the food come from? Containers? Or does it come from California and other great states in the United States, the most safest food in the world? You're putting cost factors on us and regulations on us that will not work. I'm losing more farmers every year because of Sacramento regulations. So that's my first recommendation, is to sit down in the room with real people, not to say that your staff is not real, but that really live it every day. And then my last recommendation upon this is the zero. And maybe this is the wrong time, Mr. Moderator. It's called smog check for trucks. Once, twice, 3, 4 times a year is not at all acceptable or attainable. So that's why I'm asking for us to sit down. If you want to make something work, where zero works, fantastic. We're there with you. But when you start making it a car like my trucks and my tractors, it ain't going to happen. But we're here, and you know we've been positive. We've done a hell of a lot on the farmers program. We've done a lot on the CMPs. We've done a lot on the ag engines. And we've been there. And we helped raise millions of dollars for research in Sacramento through the study agency. So that's my first recommendation, and I will be here for the whole thing to see. Thank God I don't have to wear my glasses, but at least I can see the title. But I want a human being to talk and do presentations and present those points rather than me do a TikTok thing or whatever the heck we do. So thank you so much, though, for being here. I appreciate the entire, including the governors. I understand the governor's motivation. It doesn't work for my farmers or even my ports. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Manny. I really appreciate that comment. I did want to note that this is sort of the beginning of the process, not the end, right? I mean, we do need to quickly get some initial recommendations down on paper to share with the governor, but that's really going to kick off a lot more conversations. So I do appreciate your point very much.
And I also appreciate this from a process standpoint, that using the internet tools here, smartphone tools, is not for everyone. I think also just want to acknowledge that grabbing a microphone and speaking in public isn't for everyone either. And so we just wanted to give people multiple ways to provide input. We're not privileging one over the other. So if you feel more comfortable answering the prompt by text and not speaking publicly, then that's your opportunity. And if you want to be able to use a microphone and refer to give your comment or double down on a comment you already wrote, that's completely appropriate as well. All right, other comments, hands up. Let's see. There.
Hi, thank you. Alex Emery with CCAC. I wanted to thank you first and foremost for being here. To build upon the last 2 points that were given, the community input is really, really important. And when you're able to come to the Valley, I think it's also a good reminder for everyone to remember how bad it is here. Being north or south, yes, you're still dealing with pollution, but it's nowhere near what we're dealing with here. And I wanted to say that when it comes to incentives, I think that the communities are kind of where it starts, and you have to go from the ground up instead of the top to bottom. We really need incentives, and so far, there's been a great job on your part by setting up the most recent incentive program, the Driving Clean Assistance Program. I feel like that's one of the first programs in the last 3 years that I've been working on them, where I feel like we actually had some CBO input that was taken into consideration and put into practice. So I do really want to acknowledge that. I finally felt like we were being heard and that our words were actually meaning something. The only other thing that I feel like is really important to remind you is the incentive dollar amount. And I understand there's a budget. I understand our hands can be tied at times, but I do believe that it's better to increase the incentives to a dollar amount that actually benefits the community and possibly have a lower number of adoption than to try to aim for a higher number of adoption and shorten those incentives to a smaller dollar amount. We're currently on the ground working with DCAP and advertising the program and helping people do the applications. And of course, like it was spoken about, there's obviously going to be barriers and accessibility, and that is something that we do help address as the CBOs on the ground. One of the biggest aches is languages for these incentives. People are unable to access these incentives in more than just Spanish. And again, that's why it's great for you to come down to the Valley and really take the time to explore it, go to different areas, because you'll realize just how many languages are spoken just in this 8-county valley and how detrimental it is for people to be able to adopt EVs. People who are totally qualified, people who could easily access them, but cannot access education, cannot access the incentives, and can't have somebody help them through the process once the application is submitted. Because we can meet them with the application, but we can't help them any further. Dollar amounts right now at $7,500, that's not much for someone like me who can't afford a high monthly payment. And I know that also having the used option has been amazing and wonderful. Another CBO recommendation that was taken into practice. I think the biggest thing that we're still dealing with is the dollar amount, because it is still something that's not as attainable, and especially with interest rates right now. Having it locked at 8%, also a great way to keep it from being predatory, but having to have it locked at 8% really lowers the amount of people who can qualify for it. So again, if you were able to raise the incentives, I mean, in the past, they were much higher, and there were more programs to stack. So in the last big run that we had, I myself was qualified for $23,000 in incentives, and I was still unable to get a loan that was capped at under 8%. So I lost all those incentives. But a lot of people were actually able to access those vehicles when the incentives were over 10,000. It really makes a difference to get that down payment and convince these dealerships that these are going to be people who can afford these vehicles. But when we walk in with a $7,500 voucher, they kind of just dismiss us. And it's you and us against the dealerships and against the OEMs. And if there was a possibility of collaborating with OEMs or with dealerships, I know that it's a lot of red tape and that you have just as hard of a time as we do. But I think the biggest focus is going to be dealership engagement and the incentives being raised so that people take us more seriously in the community.
Thank you. So continuing on the themes of incentives and infrastructure, other comments?
Hi, my name is Jasmine Saya, and I'm with Best Tours and Travel. I'm a second-generation operator here in the Central Valley, right here in Fresno. I'm going to read because otherwise I'm going to forget everything I wanted to say. And this has been a great opportunity to be before you because we've been for years trying to get before the cardboard. We appreciate the opportunity today to be able to have this meeting in person. And we look forward to hopefully more dialogue and open communication with you guys in the future. I am also a Vice President of the California Bus Association. I am also part of the United Motor Coach Association and American Bus Association and Women in Buses, amongst many of the other associations that we represent and work within. So as being part of Best Tours and Travel, we provide clean, safe, long-distance transportation, not for packages or cargo, but for people. We carry school children, college athletes, military personnel, seniors, church groups, tourists, and families. We connect rural communities to opportunities, cities to countryside, and Californians to experiences that shape their lives. But today I'm asking for in opposition of the governor's executive order from June 12th. Let's be honest, the goal of cleaner air is something we support. We live here too. We breathe the same air, but these policies were created without understanding the reality of the motor coach industry, which we make up 1% of this mandate. And without consulting with us, the motor coach operators in California and beyond. So here's the truth. The motor coaches on the road today, including those in my fleet, are already equipped with near zero NOx engines. Through ultra low sulfur fuel and advanced after treatment technology, they reduce harmful emissions to levels so low that they're nearly undetectable. We are by design the greenest form of passenger travel on the highway. One motor coach removes 56 private cars from the road. That's fewer emissions, less congestion, and better air quality today. But despite that, this new mandate blocks us from buying the very vehicles that are clean, efficient, and ready to serve Californians right now. There are no zero emission buses on the market that can travel 600 plus miles, carry 56 passengers with luggage, power air conditioning in 110-degree heat, and recharge between trips. These mandates assume technology that simply doesn't exist yet for long-haul, high-capacity travel. We are also federally mandated, which we're able to travel across California, United States, Canada, and Mexico. That is something that EV cannot work for our industry. These mandates assume technology that simply doesn't exist yet for long-haul, high-capacity travel, and so we're stuck. We can't buy new vehicles, and there are almost no used coaches available that meet California's rules. So what happens? We lose contracts, we lose jobs, we lose communities. At Best Tours, we support over 60 school districts, especially those struggling to find enough school bus drivers. We transport kids from underserved and migrant communities on school trips and college tours, many of whom have never left their hometowns. Our coaches are often their only gateway to the world beyond. We also support tourism, agriculture tours, business events, conventions, and we're actively planning for the Super Bowl in 2026, FIFA, and the Olympics in 2028. And when natural disasters strike, it's motor coach companies like mine that evacuate entire towns. Without us, there is no backup plan. Mandating electric motor coaches without realistic planning imposes crippling financial hardship on small operators like us. Electric buses currently cost over 1.2 million, nearly double the cost of today's clean diesel coaches. With no grant access, limited financing options, and no infrastructure to charge or house these oversized vehicles, we're being asked to invest in technology that doesn't yet work for our industry. The buses we operate today are clean, reliable, and federally authorized to travel across California, United States, Canada, and Mexico, something electric motor coaches cannot do without violating hours of service laws or stranding passengers in areas without charging. For K through 12 school field trips, college tours, and rural school programs, the idea that we could just pull over and charge for 6+ hours mid-trip, assuming that there's actually a charging station there waiting for our bus, is impractical. It's not. California has the highest rate of human trafficking in the country, and assuming that we can leave school-age children sitting there on the side for a comfort stop for 6 hours is not possible. It's inhumane. And if one of these stopping for extended periods puts students, teachers, and drivers at risk, it's a public safety crisis waiting to happen. And if one of these lithium battery packs ignites, it burns uncontrollably and can't be extinguished with water. Yet under OSHA rules, we're not even allowed to store more than 2 AA batteries without precautions. So what are we supposed to do with 10,000 pounds of lithium? The truth is these mandates ignore how our industry actually works. We are transporting people, not cargo, children, veterans, seniors, families. And until there's a safe, affordable, and proven zero emission alternative that can match the range, reliability, and responsibility of what we provide today, this policy is a threat to public safety, small business survival, and the communities we serve. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that comment. And, just a reminder that the prompt here is about the number one thing that the state can do to help maintain momentum in the zero emission vehicle market. Sounds like infrastructure, product availability is an issue. So if folks can provide some recommendations or guidance as to
what we're asking for is an exemption because of the longevity and the distance, the reliability, and how far we travel. Currently, we can travel 600+ miles, 56 people with air conditioning running and with luggage. With the electric vehicles, you can't run that range at all. You can't even make it to Bakersfield in that amount of time from here in Fresno. We transport, coming up, we're going to be having the Super Bowl here. How do you tell athletes and spectators, sorry, I got to stop and charge for 6 hours? It's not going to work. That's a recipe for disaster. running this accordingly for the motor coach industry is a huge impact financially. We don't qualify for any funding. We've even tried to apply through San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, and we don't fit in any particular box to be able to provide funding. Yet we help serve with all of the school districts with running the shortages of transporting students and colleges, athletes, international teams. Currently, we're running like 40+ tours that are coming in from overseas and beyond, and they're coming to California, and not having a viable source to be able to transport them or having the perfect conditions to have a charging location, it just doesn't exist. And we travel outside of California. So what we're looking for specifically would be an exemption. We've asked for it before, but I'm here to ask for it again. And any way that we can be able to have that open dialogue to be able to make that possible. There's science behind the next to zero NOx that's been provided before to some of the engineers in the past in our communication, but we would like to be able to request for an exemption to be able to cease this for our industry specifically.
Thank you.
I'll just note that the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation, which was the purchasing regulation for fleets, is not in effect. So fleets are not required to purchase except for state and local fleets. So that will give us some time to sort of to have this dialogue. And one of the things you mentioned kind of gives me an idea that perhaps we can sit down and think about, if we are able to gather some more incentive funds for heavy duty vehicles, is maybe working with your industry to spin up a couple pilot projects or something where companies who are interested in trying things out might be willing to accept that incentive money and see what the options are out there.
We've contacted PG&E. We've done that before. When there was an opening for a grant process a couple of years ago, we contacted our OEMs to be able to contact the manufacturers to see how much is this electric vehicle going to cost. Then we contact PG&E to come on site to be able to give us a cost evaluation on what's required, what's needed. They laughed at us. We're not even in the scope of being able to be one of the few that are going to be able to get the infrastructure to our yard. We can't even get Comcast to our yard. We have satellite for internet now out there. So the expectation that they're going to come out to be able to provide us the actual infrastructure to lay that foundation is impossible. And the funding for it, we're not state funded. You know, transit got an exemption. We're looking for the same exemption. This is a massive issue that would stop transportation services, not just in California, but for the other areas that come into the state. It also gives us an unfair advantage against the other states that are going to come in and operate illegally here in the state, because there's no way to stop them from coming in. They currently do it now. A lot of operators have left California and they've gone to other states, and then they come in illegally now. There's no way to stop them from doing that. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to run this correctly, safely. We're equitable. We want to be able to help find a solution and a path forward, but being next to zero is everything that you guys have wanted from the very beginning. We remove the congestion, we remove the pollution aspect. We're mass transportation, and we do it safely across California and beyond. The people we're transporting aren't looking to go short distances. They're traveling to major cities, other states. And with the electric buses, you have to have perfect conditions have to exist. Currently, right now in the Valley, it's 100+. That battery life, you can't run the air conditioning in that bus and an electric vehicle at the same time, because you lose all the charge. You have no place to put luggage because you're losing that luggage space for the batteries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on the topic of actions the state could take on infrastructure and incentives?
So good afternoon, Chris Shimoda with Shimoda Government Strategies. So on incentives, gonna start by saying compliment to CARB staff. I know the incentive staff is in the room, and just wanted to say that, you know, the guidelines industry has been working on, specifically like the HVIP program guidelines for several years, trying to get barriers out of the program that had been put in from a policy perspective, things like the fleet size limitations, needing to buy 30 trucks with your own dime before accessing 30 grants from the state. So just wanted to say, so far this year, the guidelines have really been going in the right direction by rethinking some of those restrictions. If you want to hypercharge the zero emission market, you really need to be providing incentives to the coalition of the willing, anybody actually willing to take the technology risk, the additional costs and everything that the previous commenter just mentioned about the difficulty of deploying zero emissions. You should make it easier for those folks to access grants and incentives. So with that being said, I do know that part of the executive order does suggest putting in additional restrictions into the incentive programs, and would just like to say, from the administration standpoint, I'm sure they're thinking, well, we don't want to reward folks who are not, living up to the standards that we put out in the prior life of rules. But I did just want to point out that some of those restrictions that are suggested in the executive order, I think, will completely kill these incentive programs. Fleets, having to keep up with previous deployment timelines under the regulations, which are now being reconsidered, I think would be a bad move. And so just compliment for the direction that I think that the board has been taking and knocking down some of those barriers to accessing the dollars. And just, in your feedback back to the governor's office suggests that that's probably moving in the wrong direction if we're going to hinder zero emission market deployment artificially. So on infrastructure, that's really the elephant in the room. And I think, most folks identified that as really the primary barrier to the market developing. And, want to say, having been part of the development of, the original rulemakings for, close to a decade, will say that I think our understanding of what is needed from a grid perspective to support the sort of deployments that the agency was looking for has evolved quite a bit from when we first started these efforts. So for instance, I think that there was a time where there was an assumption that, I won't call anybody out by name, but, heard during workshops, don't worry about the infrastructure, the utilities are going to pay for it all, right? And I don't think that anybody would say that today with our new understanding of the way that infrastructure deployment actually works in the state. And so some of the big changes from the previous years when we've been having these discussions is electricity affordability is getting, I'd say, renewed attention in the state legislature in a way that I've never seen it in nearly 15 years of doing government affairs in the state of California, where previous legislatures had a big appetite to put, let's say, market development programs on the backs of utility ratepayers. That was really the era we're coming out of. Now, policymakers are desperately looking for ways to get these programs off of the back of ratepayer cost recovery. And so there's really a question of who is actually going to pay for, in addition to the on-site costs, which we all know are large. A DC fast charger can cost as much as a brand new diesel truck to install. We also have the grid side infrastructure, transmission and distribution, which I think there is still an unresolved question there as far as what is the appetite for the policymakers who, the folks in the room, unless there is somebody from one of the regulated utilities or CPUC here, cannot make commitments on behalf of the utilities to invest money. That's really a decision between investor-owned utilities, the California Public Utilities Commission, who has to approve budgets and rate cases. What is the appetite for actually accelerating the sort of transmission and distribution infrastructure to support zero emission vehicle deployment? I think that is really kind of the first question that the agency should be exploring and answering as it proceeds, because if you want to call it the speed limit on your deployment, that's what I call it. If the utilities cannot build the supporting infrastructure to integrate the additional loads that are going to be coming on to the grid from these vehicles, you're stuck, right? An electric vehicle is no good unless you can plug it in somewhere, and we cannot plug it in unless the utility actually brings the interconnection with adequate capacity. And so that is going to be the first thing that I think you should explore moving forward as you're thinking about the infrastructure is, and this is largely going to be an internal discussion within the administration, how much state support or ratepayer support are we really willing to stomach at a time that ratepayers in the state of California have already, sort of cried uncle on their electricity bills. And so we'll just, pass it to another commenter, but want to thank you all again for the venue and looking forward to continuing to have conversations with you.
Thank you, Chris. And I did see energy affordability had come up in one of the comments as well. Let's see, on this side of the room, any hands up? I see one over there. I see two in the front row and then behind, second row.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Randolph and esteemed members of the State Department. Thanks for being here today. And want to speak from a local government perspective. My name is John Lawless. I have the pleasure to serve as the Assistant City Manager for the City of Visalia, who has strived to be a leader of sustainability and ecological sustainability. And so many examples of that starting back in 2016 and working with the CARB in the zero emission bus program as a pilot. And continues to this day. We are a partner with CalSTA on TIRSIP grants for connectivity to Visalia to the Naval Air Station Lemoore and helping serve their workforce. And so however we can within the city of Visalia to really focus on that. And so speaking specifically to infrastructure and to incentives. So very fortunate to be in the city of Visalia, given it's one of the few depot charging stations in Tulare County. City of Porterville, where I was city manager for 15 years prior to joining City of Visalia, had that as well. So in Tulare County right now, there's only 2 depot charger for any type of, whether it be refuse vehicles, transit, or what have you. So in City of Visalia, again, focusing on that, and we are now looking at, I heard the notion of a pilot program looking at hydrogen fuel cell. And that's what we're specifically looking at within the TIRSIP program as we look to launch this, what's called the Cross Valley Express, again, between Visalia and Hanford Lemoore, through the high-speed rail station to look at hydrogen fuel cell and hydrogen generation through our wastewater treatment facility, which is one of the few that another example of Visalia where all of its water is to Title 22 recycled water standards. So lots of investment on the behalf of the city towards that end. We're a recipient in partnership with the Air District on a grant to trial a electric solid waste vehicle. We're actually going to be trialing a second one and just kind of the economics of that. And I've heard much of my comments have already been stated previously, talking about ratepayers. So in our refuse solid waste operations, a real concern on the ratepayer, what they're paying for the service they receive. We're fortunate to be half, I would say, of some other comparable agencies. But the cost difference between a CNG solid waste vehicle that you receive now is about $400,000, and we're going to be trialing a vehicle that's $950,000. The grant that we received through the Air District is for $120,000. So that cost difference is going to be a real application as it relates to as it's applied back to the ratepayers having to pay for that difference. And then secondly, on infrastructure, as I spoke to, really focusing on how we can expand upon that. I will be candid. There's been resistance from whether it be size of agency, technical ability, funding availability, those sorts of things to have better infrastructure within Tulare County. Our Tulare County Association of Governments, Ted Smalley, has been very focused on that and working with the city of Visalia and how we can improve that in Tulare County and the Kings County region. But just did want to focus back. Certainly deficient infrastructure, especially in this area, which Visalia is trying to be a leader in improving that position. But then also looking at really needs to be focused on incentives and how to kind of level the playing field of sorts if we're going to go in this direction.
Thank you. Yeah, if you could hand the microphone back. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dirk Piersma, and I'm a fleet manager with one of the biggest egg producers here in California. couple comments. One is safety derived. Been looking into the zero emission trucks for our feed and egg production facilities. One of the biggest concerns I have with all of this stuff, especially with the lithium ion batteries, we deal a lot with like avian influenza and outside influences into our flock health. So a lot of our disinfectants and stuff that we use are very heavily acid based. The thing that I'm starting to get worried about is there's a lot of fires and stuff happening with a lot of this stuff, and the technology isn't there to keep water and acid and stuff out of these batteries. So for us, trying to invest into a truck that's going to go through a disinfect station at least 6 to 10 times a day, I'm seeing a lot of hazards, and I'm going to see a lot of money go up in smoke real fast, and you know, potentially a death issue at some point if the driver can't get out. Second, across all of this, knowing what we know now about our infrastructure and the amount of power that we're looking at, and it keeps increasing daily with all the new stuff that's coming online. Have you guys ever thought about like pushing an interim project? I know there's a couple of manufacturers. One comes to mind up in Canada, Edison Motors. They've got a truck that they're coming out with right now. It runs a small diesel engine that runs a generator with a small battery pack, very similar to our locomotive setups that Union Pacific runs. And they're getting 20 plus miles to the gallon, pulling 80,000 pounds down the road. You know, this seems more of a viable option to start decreasing emissions quickly while not putting extra load on the grid. And that would be one of my recommendations. And the other recommendation too, or it's more of a concern, everybody's talking about cost for everything. Food's going up, fuel's going up. All those costs get passed on to the end consumer. Even all of the grants and everything here, it's all taxpayer funded. I just want to caution you guys to be very careful on that line that you walk, because we're already taxed more than any other American basically in this state. And I know a lot of people are getting frustrated with that because they don't feel like they're being represented anymore. And, you know, it hurts. I mean, middle class in this state is disappearing rapidly. So.
Thank you for that comment. Let's see, someone on the microphone over there. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Patrick Smith. I was with Harris Ranch for 25 years, managed corporate transportation, renewable energy, and alternative fuel projects. In transportation, the two most important costs are the labor cost per mile and fuel cost per mile. Fuel cost with electric vehicles is mainly kilowatts. And that price of the kilowatt just in the last 16 months has doubled. And that's in commercial transportation. You have to do a lot of charging on the road. And that would be very hard economically to sustain that. We aren't economically sustainable. We can't sustain anything.
Thank you for that comment.
I'll just shout out to Harris Ranch as an EV owner. I stop at your charging stations all the time. They're excellent. Thank you.
With that, we had hydrogen fueling also, but that has been such low demand. The reliability of the stations, they have so many sensors for safety issues. It's very difficult. Our best program, we did an LNG program started in '98. We had to sunset that. We wanted to replace that fleet after 7 years. We didn't have an engine certified. And then when they did get an engine certified, the upcharge was $82,000 a vehicle and an increase in tare weight of 2,500 pounds. So then we went back to clean diesel for 10 years until the near zero engines came out and ran that program, which was very cost effective compared to diesel. And we ran that. We had 28 vehicles that did 3 million miles a year in our with all renewable LNG. And our fuel cost was 20 cents a mile cheaper than diesel at the time. But there has to be support for those type of programs, because at the end of the day, we still have to get the job done. And if we don't have technology, I can understand pushing technology and coming out with regulations. But if it's not commercially attainable and economically attainable, the grants certainly help in that area. And from a personal perspective, for personal vehicles, grants have to help offset the cost of those EVs. The lady's comments were very much on point. And there's been such a slowdown because of economy and cost of the EVs compared to other choices for transportation. And there has to be a used supply of vehicles to get in on a lower cost basis, and that isn't materializing. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you. And we have a comment in the front row here on the same side.
Hi, Winola here with CCAC. Just wanted to really bring it back to the question that was asked was how incentives will benefit the community. And I think we really need to think about what we're going into the next fiscal year and financial year for a lot of Americans, which is the truth is that they're going to be counting on every single dollar that they have to make it, whether it's food, groceries, basic necessities. Literally at this point, I feel like a lot of people, if they lose their transportation, that's basically it for them. And so one of the major things that needs to be done is a focus on infrastructure, especially in our rural communities. A lot of them are interested in these EV adoptions, but the problem is that there is no infrastructure out there. A lot of the infrastructure is focused in more in the cities, such as Fresno, but we're talking more rural, like Singer, surrounding areas of people want to go out of the area to charge or use their vehicles. It shouldn't take them at least 30, 45 minutes to get to a charger. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about, as well as also making sure the incentive money is enough. Again, a lot of people are looking to purchase vehicles, especially at this time, might be looking at additional costs with tariffs. I might be looking at additional cost with vehicle purchases. We don't know what the infrastructure, not the infrastructure, but what the market is going to look like within the next few months or even year. So again, boosting that money up, even if it means less vehicles for people, if it's enough to cover the full down payment for a vehicle, is a much better benefit to people because they'll be able to at least have that vehicle and obtain that for a longer period of time. And I think that's the main thing, is that we want this to stick to the community. We don't want them just purchasing things and buying things and getting all this money for stuff, and then they end up being or feeling like, oh, we can't use this because it's too expensive, or I can't afford it, or maybe it was good in the moment, but it's no longer good. And I think that's the main thing, is keeping the EV adoption rate as well. This is something that the incentives should also focus on, because again, a lot of people, they're interested, they want these things, they need these things, but also if there's no infrastructure, if there's no support, how are they supposed to continue adopting and convincing others to adopt? And I think that's another thing that needs to be focused on as well, is that we're still going up against a lot of people who are still unsure about EVs. I know we're having higher level conversations, but we also need to focus on the community as well, who are still used to, most people do drive that gas vehicles. They still do drive those things, and they're completely used to that because it's just go to a gas station. You know, people need to have that education as well. And I think those are the things that we also need to continue working on, not just focusing on what benefits who. It's also bringing it back to the people that actually are going to use these things. So thank you.
Thank you. So I know we had those two themes of infrastructure and incentives. I also just want to open it up now. If there's another number one action that you would like California to take to maintain momentum in zero emission vehicles that is not related to infrastructure or incentives, also want to make sure there's space for that as well. Comment.
This is really more observing the conversation. And it does relate back to infrastructure, because that is the elephant in the room. Without that, you can't do any of this. I don't care which form of alternative energy you're talking about. But I also think what I'm hearing is really, for rural communities, this is really hard because it's hard to get that investment in the infrastructure. And that's whether you're talking about buses or tractors. I work with ag. But it sounds to me, the other thing the state really needs to do is really look at where would that investment make a difference? Where would it make a difference from an air quality perspective, greenhouse? So when you're looking at the dollars you have, is how do you make a difference? And that may not be everybody, which is a hard thing given the focus on equity that the state has. But I think in terms of figuring out where do you get the biggest bang for your buck, clearly the most advancement is still in the light duty vehicles. That's where it seems to be easiest, at least within certain communities. So I really think that's the other thing to think about. And then for that investment in infrastructure, saying, okay, if we really did invest here, where would we have that biggest change to start getting that more wholesale process of change? Because you can do grants everywhere. And we're seeing it now, even for electric cars, those charging stations, it's good luck. And then you have to have 5 apps on your phone to figure that out. So again, how do we make that easier? How do we make that dollar make sense? I think that's the other thing I'm just hearing as I'm listening to this. And the cholera, whatever, it's related to that. And this ties into the governor's recent executive order on CEQA for building, is really looking at what are the regulations that impede that infrastructure building that all need to be followed. Are there opportunities for some simplification in that arena that would bring the cost down?
Thank you. So any additional comments on the number 1 actions folks want to take? And then I'm going to go to a second prompt. Let's see. Let me give back there chances to weigh in.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Olson. I'm with Environmental Defense Fund. I really appreciate CARB and the rest of the agencies for holding this really critical dialogue here. On the first 2 points around incentives and infrastructure, we would echo many of the comments made around the need to be maximizing and directing financial incentives to those who need it most. So in this sense, I think we're looking at small and medium-sized farms, as well as independent truck owner and operators, really aiding in that purchase of clean vehicles. From our experience and the partners that we worked with, HVIP has been a very important program. It's often oversubscribed within days or hours of becoming available and should definitely be a priority for increased consistent funding. And then on the infrastructure piece of this, I think that we clearly understand we do need a robust network of high-powered, reliable charging stations along key freight corridors like Highway 99, as well as agricultural depots. And I know that, from our experience and conversations with developers, we have developers that want to be deploying these charging stations, but it is just a matter of how long it takes to construct them and for electric utilities to connect and energize them. And so we do think that it's very important that we're having the interagency collaboration between CARB and CEC and the CPUC to be adopting updated, aggressive energization timeline targets as well.
Thank you. Let me go to a second prompt now. If you can show my screen here. And if you still have comments on the previous question, I think we'll be able to hopefully work those in. And like I said, there's other opportunities for input. So this next prompt is, what types of programs to meet air quality and climate targets would you like to see state agencies assess and possibly implement? So good segue from our last comment there about HVIP program. So what other types of programs, or perhaps that program, would you like to see agencies assess and implement? Let folks use their phones. If they want to provide written comment, for anyone who doesn't feel comfortable using this written format, we will take comments by microphone as well. But I want to give folks a chance to use their phones and provide some responses. So we'll give people a minute or two. And I should also emphasize, given that the focus of this discussion is on agriculture and trucking, although, as I said, we're happy to hear other feedback as well. If people have ideas specifically related to agriculture and trucking, that would be very much appreciated. I'm seeing lots of some meaty feedback here and a few themes emerging. Although a lot of different ideas as well, but some themes related to more targeted use of incentive programs, themes related to using programs for education and outreach, introducing more flexibility, some specific programs, ongoing programs called out as well. So curious, I'll let people continue to type away. So just because we're transitioning off of this and into the verbal part doesn't mean we're not still tracking your comments. So please do continue to type if you haven't yet type it. Want to open it up for verbal comments as well. Anyone wants to elaborate on something in here, particularly if it relates to some of those key themes or something that's missing here? Yeah, comment in the back.
My name's John Sanders. I'm with I'm on the environmental side of CAC in Kern County. The reason, what I could say about this, what types of programs to meet air quality and climate targets would you like to see state agencies assess and possibly implement, would be the ones that are practical. Start with the practical, perfect that process. And then when you perfect that process, we can get better at the other ones. These large trucks, like I have a company that has a lot of large trucks, and our job is to abandon oil wells, which is another way of serving this purpose. But our vehicles cannot, we can't use electric vehicles for that. We're trying to, and we have some hybrid things that we're doing as well. And we really are trying. I love the little light duty pickup trucks and Cyber Beast and all those things. Those are really cool. And I can charge one for about $22 a night at my house, or every 4 nights. It costs me about $22. So, that's low hanging fruit. And people typically will drive their car, one person in the car. So if you could start with that, and then you maybe start with a crew truck that you could put 4 people in. When you have a big truck, it's driving down the road, abandoning oil wells, taking these things out of the air that we're worried about. Kern County's we have bad asthma. We know it. Our air is bad. And the people in Kern County, the oil producers, and the people who maintain those oil fields are very conscious. There's 2 electric rigs in Kern County, and there's 2 more probably coming in the next 6 weeks. But if you take your low hanging fruit, get as much as you can with that, as much, I don't even know the right word, success. And then you move forward to the other items, maybe a hybrid piece or something like that. You could still achieve this. And you say, what types of programs? I'll just say the program would be get the easy things first, and then let the businesses and private entities find out the rest once they like this. Competition is pretty good at weeding out what works and what doesn't. And I could tell you, the people in the oil business and the people who do the work for those producers, we want everything to be electric if we can, because the price of fuel's through the roof. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Targeted on those use cases to start. Other comments, ideas in terms of this prompt around programs that the state agencies could look to assess and possibly implement. In front here.
Alex Emery again, CCAC. I also wanted to bring up the California e-bike incentive project. It was a great solution to offer to residents who couldn't afford an electric vehicle, while also baby stepping them into the world of EVs. And I totally understand how it ran and everything that happened. And all in all, I still think that it was a great program. The eligibility requirements were extremely accessible. The communication from the program was very efficient. And I know that there was such a high need. And I'm sure you were able to also see the numbers of hundreds of thousands of people trying to go over or after only 1,500 incentives. And I think that even the dollar amount is good. It could be $500 to $1,000 more just to make sure that it's accessible for those who need those cargo and adaptive e-bikes. They are eligible through the program, but the price point of those is like $3,000 and up. And the max of the incentive was capped at $2,000 for disadvantaged communities. So it did kind of limit the access that we had, especially because we had to buy them assembled through local shops. So there was also kind of that uptick of extra money that the shop had to make back, which is understandable. We couldn't order them online. There's a lot of difficulty with that. So again, asking for another incentive just to be bumped up a little bit, but for that program to continue to be funded because it was a huge need. And there are a lot of people who are not in a place where they can access a vehicle, but having an electric bike for transportation to work has made a huge difference for them. And then I also want to echo one of the topics up there for culturally relevant outreach and training to target specific communities. I think that honestly, putting some of your funding into solely focusing on intensive outreach, multiple languages, multiple communities, getting the same exact message across, and then working with those communities specifically to develop that instead of just taking it on yourselves. There are a lot of organizations who are fully vetted for that, who do it like day in and day out. And then there's the rest of us who are just on the ground with the communities every day. And that's, I think, a really huge gap that we keep missing in these programs because we focus so much on the biggest numbers in the Valley, which would be Hispanic and English speaking. So we focus on those numbers and we focus on knocking those groups out. And it's great and it's done great, but it feels like that adaptability is kind of just staying at those two. It's not transferring into the other communities that we serve. So I really echo all of the ones up there that are about language and community outreach. I think that there's not enough targeted outreach. I think we're just funding groups to talk about things or to spread word about programs, but there's no real funding for specific education to those communities, targeting what they're needing, speaking in their language, and then addressing all of the confusion and fear that they have over clean energy and clean vehicles. There's a lot of propaganda out there right now. The internet is swamped with it. We have an administration that's against it. And we're out here kind of fighting for our lives, trying to convince residents like, no, a lot of that is fake. We're meeting you with facts. We're meeting you with standards. And then losing pages on the government website that also backs that up has been very difficult. And I know that that's something out of your control and you probably echo that as well. But we're losing the opportunities to talk to people, and these people are losing the ability to do their own independent research. So I think it's very important that every program that we roll out, that there's a full-blown dedication to making sure that there's consistent language about these programs that's in more simplistic terms and not so high level and like legal jargon, because you lose people with that as well.
Thank you.
I'll add on to that. Elizabeth Perez from Norfolk Rancheria, Mono Indians. I'm a tribal and rural tribal member there, but I'm also a renewable energy developer, be licensed here in California. And I work with a lot of tribes on developing microgrid infrastructure. And as I mentioned, I do live in San Diego, but I belong to this community. I was raised here in the tribe. I don't know how many people in the room are from a tribal community here in the Central Valley. Okay, and I don't know, that says something. I don't know if anybody's online that's from a tribal community. And I was actually the one that said the intentional targeted outreach. The numbers matter, yes, but intentional outreach, that's outreach for owning a vehicle and the incentives to own a vehicle. That's an intentional outreach to talk about the different incentives and then also the technical assistance, the availability for that. And as a developer, I want to include local hire, include tribal members to work on these projects, particularly in Tule River Tribe. We're doing a $20 million project, the first phase of a microgrid project. We had the first medium heavy duty vehicle charging stations that were installed in Porterville for on tribal land. And actually that's the only project in the Central Valley that is a medium heavy duty vehicle in the Central Valley at a tribe right now. And so I'm here because of there isn't enough representation and getting that awareness from tribes and just letting them know that, hey, this is important. I'm going to meet with other tribes here locally. But I do believe that there's not enough incentives. I think there's a lot of also stereotypes that go in with the tribes. Oh, they have all this money and infrastructure and they can train their own people. We don't have that. I come from that tribe. There's a lot of poverty. But not to throw out other tribes, but like Big Sandy Rancheria, same. A lot of these tribes, a lot of the tribal people, they don't have tribal members, excuse me, they don't have the funds to purchase these vehicles, and the workforce training just doesn't exist. And finding, I'm trying to find just even an apprentice, journeyman, something of that nature. And even I want more interns. I've only had 2 interns that are stepping in this. And I'm the only woman general contractor that's native, that's licensed in the state of California, and probably the nation, and a veteran. Just throwing all that in there. But we just need more of that. If we want this to continue, we need money to do this and access. And I know it's a tough time right now with everything going on, but I think it's just so important. And as you can see in this room, we're not here. So we need more awareness.
Thank you. Let's see, comment in the back there.
Well, farmer program, one of your greatest achievements, 2008, voluntary program with agriculture in the San Joaquin Valley and the rest of the state, but mainly the San Joaquin Valley. The farmer program has been a success. Voluntary, over 14,000 tractors removed, 0s and 1s, to new clean tier 3 and 4s, tremendous reductions of emissions. What we would ask the governor's office, if we're going to give incentives to industries, all types, doesn't matter what it is, for programs, the fireplace program, the clean cars program, if we're going to tell people incentives are going to be there, then we better lock them in. What we can't have is what's happened this year in the governor's office in the budget. We removed no funding for farmer at all, but yet is the most cost-effective NOx reduction PM that you have at ARB, the most cost-effective. And yet we say incentives, and incentives are important for all industries, especially in agriculture. But in those incentives, we need to lock that in and say, okay, we're going to do an incentive. No matter what governor comes in, you're not going to strip it and go put it into something else that maybe has no relevance. Or taking cap and trade money and putting it into other projects that have no relevance. Oh, but it does, it cleans up the air. Well, it's difficult for businesses and people to plan. So it has to be a solid commitment in incentives. The farmer funding is your greatest model across anywhere in the country. And yet we go from year to year with the legislature saying we're going to get it or not, who you talk to, who didn't you talk to, are you on the good side of the governor, or are you on the bad side of the governor? But air quality should not be that type of an issue, and it should say, no, it does this, we've got to fund it. So I would really recommend somehow you tie incentives to where they at least have a timeline, 5 years. And if it's $250 million a year for the farmer program for California, fantastic. Because I don't know if everybody in the audience or listening, incentive fundings are not 100% by the state. Agriculture farmer program, 50% of the funds come from the farmer. So in this valley, we've spent 1.9 billion. Of that, probably 800 million came from farmers. So the farmers have put money into it getting help, just due to the economy, due to the trade, whatever you want to call it, and the cost. So there has to be a lock, just like the Clean Cars program, one of the greatest programs you have. And I commend the San Joaquin Valley staff and Samir and the board, done one heck of a job. I've tended some of those things. And man, when people The staff are so human and they speak the people's language. And they're not, people aren't intimidated. So the farmer program, all of them need a solid commitment where the governor or the legislature cannot, when they're unhappy with us, they yank the money away because then it hurts the people. The last one is the ag burn. San Joaquin Valley has no more burning for farmers, but yet we can burn the Sierras. We can burn Los Angeles. We can burn whatever we want, but San Joaquin Valley farmers no longer burn. All of their material has to go into the ground. We've gotten rid of our biomass facilities that were helping to take agricultural waste. They're all gone. Or maybe we have to start thinking when we come back to the table, what other means can we use with this agricultural waste? What other type of fuels can we turn into with this agricultural waste? But ag was promised money to go out of burning and putting it into the ground, helping to chip it, grind it, do all those great things. After a year after the funding, then the next year, nothing. Thank God for the Air District and even some of what EPA did last year. But there is no money in the budget again for the ag burn. So how does the farmers foot these type of costs? Again, we sat in the room with you, ARB, Richard Corey, great guy, sat in the room and said, okay, we'll do this. We'll get funding. The governor's office, we're going to be there to help you. And we're going to make sure it happens. Well, in the year 25, there's nothing. So how does our farmers obtain that type of cost to incorporate it, especially with Sigma being out there now on the west side? Will cause a lot of land to go dormant. It means those trees are going to stay. And when those trees stay, we have other huge problems. So again, I would ask, Madam Chair, that we put something solid that no matter who governor is, no matter, they don't get their little fingers on it and strip it and put it and take it from cap and trade. Cap and trade is specifically for air quality purposes, which a lot of people here are asking for. So again, the farmer funding is crucial, absolutely crucial, the most cost effective, and you get it now. You get it right now. You cut that tractor in half. And you've done that, Madam Chair. You've cut a tractor in half. And that poor lady, Shirley, she didn't know what she did when you cut her tractor in half. But when she got in that new air-conditioned tractor, oh, she forgot about the old one that she had for 40 years. So it was great. Again, an ag smoke, the program. So again, I want to thank you. But that is a very important two major programs for agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Anyone who hasn't yet had a chance to weigh in verbally by microphone? Or any returning champions, that's fine too, if you've already spoken, but just want to make sure we have a chance for those who haven't yet spoken. Any other comments? Yeah, in the back there.
Good afternoon. My name is Roxy, and I come from the ag, trucking, and heavy equipment construction. And the CARB program has taken a jab at us in all different directions. The new CARB program, you know, the time and the expense and everything else just to have your vehicles tested and wait to see if CARB gets the information so that DMV releases your information. It's been a cycle of, you know, calling and delays. And so that's just one part of it. Another one was several years back, I had several trucks that were fairly new, but because of CARB, I had to sell those trucks and buy new ones for my haul trucks. You know, that hurts small construction people. I use my trucks for my construction site. I use my trucks for hauling my almonds to the packing houses. So it hits us all the way around. And then the CARB, the ARB with all the heavy off-road heavy equipment, We have to minimize hours. We have to take stuff off. We have to buy new. You know, it hurts small businesses, and there are not a lot of incentives out there for this, for any of it. And again, the money we have to put out now just to have our trucks tested, you know, the fees that we have to keep up with on CARB and the time, much less the people that have to come out and test them. And then that guy spends time chasing down to make sure CARB is getting the paperwork, because I've had him not have my paperwork. He's had to come out and test again. And it's just a vicious cycle. I mainly run most of it myself, and it's a lot of work. And I just think I don't see the benefit of it right now. Most of our vehicles have to be small. So I think it's detrimental to smaller businesses all the way around and the ag.
I appreciate the comment, and just thinking about the prompt of, you know, if you don't mind answering, actually, just if you can, what types of programs or what kind of assistance then would you be looking for? Or are there other types of programs that might be a model for state folks to be considering?
You know, I'm not sure, really. I do know we have in the ag side, we have done the incentives of trading in a tractor and gotten a new tractor and that. But I'm not sure. But you've got to think about even like the ag side, and as far as my construction side, my partner's an older gentleman. We're not going to be doing this for very many years. So why do I want to go out and put millions of dollars into new equipment and stuff like this now, you know? So there's got to be something easier. And again, I'm with everybody else. We can't move forward until we fix our infrastructure and know what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, thoughts in response to the prompt about programs that the state should be considering? Go to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I do have to take off here. We have a council meeting this afternoon. I think you take back. But I think in this end, I think really if you would consider extending the deadlines, push it out another 5 years. I think we're hearing the infrastructure is not there, the manufacturers are not there. Why beat us up and penalize us for not meeting a goal that we can't meet? So I would like to see CARB consider moving the deadlines out 5 years and then maybe reassessing at that point. Maybe we've made enough progress. Maybe we have not. Maybe, private businesses come up, manufacturers have come up. And then the other thing is to clarify the regulations again. I know that was a confusion for some folks, and I've heard it here today, who now does not have to, comply with the current regulations and who does. And how can we get exemptions? So I think there are some things in the regulations that could be clarified for the general public and for local government as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Another comment over here.
Nola again, CCAC. Just wanted to add briefly to the comment that was just mentioned. I agree with what you're saying. However, the only reason why I'm bringing this up is just because my concern is pushing back again. Already hearing in the Central Valley and in Bakersfield as well, we have one of the worst air qualities in the nation. And I think continuing to push the idea of pushing the can down the line, it's not our problem, it's not our problem, is not going to address the problem. It's just, and I think even if, and here's the thing, the idea of reaching a goal is great, but even if we don't reach that goal, the idea is to take whatever is learned from that and to then move forward with meeting those goals or seeing where we fell short. And I think the idea of, again, pushing things down the line isn't really helpful to those people who are living here now. Again, just reiterating the timing. I understand that we have until like 2030, if I'm not mistaken, to meet some of these goals. But again, pushing the can down the line does not fix the problem. It just prolongs it. So rather seeing where we can meet our goals is more understanding to me than just saying, okay, well, it's not going to happen within the next 5 years, so might as well just give us an extension. I'd rather see where we're falling short and then seeing how we can improve from there.
Comment in the back there and then over there.
Roger Isom, California Cotton Ginners and Growers Association and Western Tree Nut Association. I want to address that last comment, and I don't know your format. I wish these questions would have been given to us in advance so we could kind of plan on how to comment. So I'm probably going to cover a bunch of things here to try to address this. But first, kicking the can down the road, I don't think that is anybody's intention. The one common theme that I hope you guys have heard today, but I don't think you have because there's nobody from the Energy Commission up there, is the infrastructure is not there. We've been working with CARB very closely for many years. We held a meeting with them in Modesto 2 years ago where we brought this up and brought it to light. The infrastructure is not there. I don't know how many times we can say that. I can't even get my facilities hooked up right now. I have 3 members who are hooked up to natural gas generators because they can't get hooked up by PG&E. I have 2 more members that have put in solar that can't get hooked up because PG&E can't get out there. It just doesn't work. It's not there. I mean, it's plain and simple, and you've heard it a bunch of times today. We do want to help and be part of the solution, as we've done repeatedly for many years. We've helped this district specifically achieve attainment of the first PM10 standard, the 1-hour ozone standard, and now 2 different PM 2.5 standards because the San Joaquin Valley just reached attainment on the 15 microgram standard. So it's not a matter of not doing something. We definitely have. And I say we because we're part of the solution and been involved. The farmer program was mentioned. Are you asking for something to do that needs to be done? Absolutely. But it also needs to be a lot of other programs. Once and for all, EPA needs to fund DERA at its full amount. The targeted airshed grants, and I know they've been very good to the district, but not enough. This district and South Coast should get the bulk of that money. They're the worst non-attainment areas in the country, but they spread that money all over the country. Until we get to attainment of these standards, the bulk of that money should come right here. We need certainty. Right now, it's year to year. We're fighting. We're spending political capital up there every year. I've been up there every week, or my staff's been up there every week trying to push farmer this year in a budget that's a disaster, and we don't know if we're going to get a single dollar out of it. It's hard to plan, hard to achieve those goals if we don't have that certainty in there. And yet we're going to fund things like high-speed rail, which still isn't being built and grows exponentially, when if we'd have taken half that money, we probably would have got your goals with the money that with the programs like Farmer and HVIP and CORE and all the things we do, and gotten real reductions much sooner than high-speed rail even before to be built. So that's, you know, in terms of programs. But the one thing you need to do in terms of not a program, but this state and this group needs to sit down with the Energy Commission and actually come up with how much, and I know they're going through an IPER proceeding right now trying to determine how much electricity we're going to use and what that planning infrastructure is. That needs to be done yesterday. We're sitting here, you guys are pushing these rules when we don't know what that is. And the comment about kicking the can on the road, the problem with that is we get penalized if we don't achieve those goals. As our members, CARB has told us, at the end of the day, on the truck rule, for example, you get 5 years worth of extension. At the end of the 5 years, if you're not hooked up, sorry, you're out of business. That's the rule. And so there is an issue with that. It does need to be addressed, again, to give our guys certainty in how you plan and how you spend your money. That right there, it's not there right now. So again, I apologize. I don't know the format. I don't know when you're going to ask questions, but I tried to address as many as I could in those comments.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, you know, our hope is that in this, having a bit of a guided discussion here, we'll be able to get to all the issues, and anything that we don't get to cover today, as I mentioned, there will be a meeting on July 29th where anything we not able to get to today, you can have the opportunity to talk about. But I think you hit on a lot of the themes we've been able to cover today. I know we had a comment there, and then I'm going to see if the panelists have anything they want to respond. Then we'll go ahead and take a short break and come back for some more discussion. So please proceed.
I'm John Sanders. I'm from Bakersfield. I'm on the CAC. If we look at the billboard here, it says we're 94% reduction in stationary source emissions. Okay. That is with people not cooperating. Now you have people cooperating. We could still do this even if we kick the can, so to speak, down the road. But the other thing I wanted to mention was we're talking about, I said earlier, if we are to take the low hanging fruit, get those, utilize that, and let private industry figure out the rest. It might take 5 years extra. It might take 10 years extra. But I didn't get to follow up or finish off with that. When you get the low hanging fruit, you can't penalize those other people where the energy is not available. And I think I want to add that to it, but I also want to recognize where we've been and where we've come from and where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before we break, I just want to give an opportunity that anyone on the dais here wants to reflect anything back. No pressure if not, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity.
Roger, you mentioned that no one from Energy Commission is here, but actually I know Commissioner Skinner wasn't able to make it today, but there is a CEC representative in the back from her office. So just wanted to note that we do have representatives from the agencies listening. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to thank everyone for a really engaging, on point first half of this discussion. So I just thank everyone's engagement with this process and kind of following the rules as we laid them out. We'll go ahead and take a 15-minute break. So we'll come back here at 3:06.
Can I ask a question, Ethan? Kind of to Roger's point, do you want to just give people a preview of what your last couple prompts are?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and appreciate the acknowledgement that we didn't give you advance notice. We did want to keep this somewhat open-ended, but when we come back for the last half here, one of the questions will be around incentive programs that you would like to see adopted that are non-financial in nature. I mean, obviously, a lot we could talk about that are financial incentives, but a specific prompt around non-financial incentives. And then the second prompt we wanted to get to when we come back is what are some of the principles of program design that would ensure we don't leave any Californians behind? So really getting at this issue of equity that a number of you have raised. So again, when we come back, we really want to focus in on incentive programs, non-financial incentive programs, and how we make sure we don't leave anyone behind. So if you want to get your brain juices flowing on those questions and be ready to answer those prompts, we'll have that teed up when we get back. So I appreciate the opportunity to give you a preview on that. All right, so now it's 3:52, so 2:52, so it's 3:07. We'll start up here so everyone can go stretch their legs, bathrooms down the hall. Thank you very much. Their seats, we'll get started. Let go. Go. There we go. There it is. All right. Appreciate everyone being timely. I did give you an extra minute. We're supposed to start at 3:07. We started here at 3:08. So appreciate everyone's promptness. And again, just want to thank you all for the first half of the discussion. We've got, as I mentioned at the beginning, up until 5 p.m. as a hard stop. We'll continue on now with the prompts that I previewed before we went to break. And I want to kick it off with the first prompt. We've got it up there on the screen. What incentive programs, other than financial support, could encourage more adoption of zero emission vehicles and equipment? So I'll give folks a chance to scan the QR code, text, join via browser, and I'll give people a few minutes to start responding to that prompt. All right, lots of ideas there for non-financial incentives. Although some folks are kind of stretching the definition of non-financial, but that's okay. We do want to have a somewhat of a broad scope, but are very focused, are very interested in this question of what can be done without funding. So some themes jumping out here related to providing information, guidance, increased education, training, marketing and outreach, recognition of progress being made, some streamlining of existing programs, focus on infrastructure. So some of the common themes I think that we heard in our first half discussion. As people are still writing in, and we'll keep this going for a little bit here. Curious if anyone out there wants to make a comment here verbally or perhaps explain what you wrote in more depth, or if you're not seeing one of your key recommendations here, you want to verbalize that or aren't able to figure out how to get your comment in, good opportunity for a microphone. So anyone want to raise hands to weigh in on this question?
And I will also note briefly, because this has come up a few times, in the advanced clean trucks regulation, which is the manufacturer requirement, there are provisions for plug-in hybrid trucks. So that is a thing that is part of the program. Just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that.
Hi, friends, me again. I'm just am gonna drive home what we've already said about the languages and the outreach and education that's severely lacking. I know we've said it, I know you've heard it, but I also feel like we've been saying it for years and it hasn't been heard. So I just want to say it one more time. Education is what is going to make or break the success of your programs. A lot of people are opposing this clean energy just out of honest ignorance or lack of education. And when we are able to get to them and educate them, they actually completely change their minds and are all for it. It's a really simple flip. It's not like we're, you know, having to get people to change their mind on something they've been set on for decades. It's a simple switch of just not knowing something. And again, language, it's so important. If we're not reaching all of our state, then are we really doing statewide work?
Yeah, pass it. Go ahead.
Really quick to add on to my colleagues' remarks, also, again, benefits, how this benefits people. Again, if you're showing people that, hey, this is a financial incentive to themselves, like showing them the lower cost, showing them how much money they're going to save. Again, people, I know it's not about the financial part at this point, but people are really looking to save their bottom dollar at this point. So showing the benefits, showing the cost benefit, how much you're going to save through education is such a big thing. And I think that also needs to be encouraged again with language, educational outreach materials, especially with our rural communities. Again, they want these things. They want to have these things. But even if the infrastructure isn't there, at least giving them the knowledge to understand what they're going to be signing up for and what they're looking for already just encourages that.
Thank you. All right, other comments? Chris?
Thank you, Chris Shimoda again. And, the program did get brought up by another commenter, not a zero emission program, but Clean Truck Check, the nation's first smog check style program for trucks, started implementation a couple of years ago. And just want to thank ARB for working with California Trucking Association on implementation of the program. There's been a lot of administrative issues that have arisen out of the reporting system. As you all know, state government IT projects are sort of notoriously difficult, and CTC Viz, as it's known, has definitely had its hiccups. I'll just say that. Compliant fleets are spending a ton of time, energy, and resources to comply with the program that today has a twice a year testing requirement, set to go to a 4 times a year testing requirement in 2027. When I was on staff with CTA, we did submit a streamlining proposal to CARB staff, encouraging compliance and also obviously the avoidance of things like software cheating, DPF deletes, hollowing out cores, the sort of stuff that CTC is really designed to try to get at and remove from the industry. We had submitted a streamlined proposal that said that, look, if you're submitting compliant tests, if you're showing clean scans, doing what you need to do to maintain your emission control systems, that there should be a reduction in frequency as a reward for that compliance. And the enhanced frequency should really be focused on those fleets that are found to be doing some of these, either malmaintenance or tampering practices, including, I just say as a suggestion, it wouldn't really cost CARB a dime to look into revisiting a streamlining concept on CTC that Nick Chappie, who's on staff here at CTA, can attest is probably the program causing the most heartburn at the moment in the industry because of the immense downtime and costs associated with the way that the program's been implemented. Revisiting that discussion to include both a sort of, gold seal of approval compliance record, but also for those fleets that are deploying zero emission vehicles in the absence of mandates, that could also be a component to accessing a streamlining program. If you're deploying X amount of zero emission vehicles, it gets you into this streamlining lane where maybe instead of 4 times a year testing, you're doing a once annual or a randomized sample of the fleet. That would be a huge incentive that, again, would not cost the state budget a dime, but I think would be very welcome by the regulated fleets under that program. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely these themes of flexibility and program guidance, program requirements, some detail coming in on training. So certainly an open prompt if anyone wants to comment generally, but if you had any specifics on those prompts. Yeah.
In relation to the clean truck deal, I know a lot of it's up in the air with the administration change at the federal level. Currently, because I've noticed recently, we've got a lot of trucks coming in from out of state now that have no emission systems on them whatsoever. Are you guys legally able to stop them at the border? Are you not with all the free trade agreements across the country? I mean, it feels like at this point we're being penalized for all this stuff to try to meet the requirements for the state of California when other companies can come in and undercut the crap out of us.
I don't know if anyone on the panel has any information in response to that. Otherwise, we'll just note the question.
We'll get back.
All right, other comments? In the back and then in the front. Yeah.
I'm going to focus on that. You have a 0.026 gram engine, the tier 4, the cleanest engine. In Riverside, you're coming out with a tier 5 engine, a tier 5, 0.009 grams per brake horsepower. You can suck on it just about. Why would we need to go to a 4-time year smog check with the most cleanest engine ever built? And that is an economic disaster. It is time consuming. The cost, the education is even a disaster. If we want to talk about trade, we do have a trade problem that when you first kicked off the ports in 24, where Canada and Mexico could not go into the port of Oakland or Long Beach because they didn't have an electric truck, and then you amended it to allow tier 4s. We have enough trade agreement problems. I have farmers that truck directly to New York. Their cold storages hire the truck company in New York. They come to California with a load, they go back with a load. We can certainly try to force those trucks, but if we do, there won't be any stuff coming into California. And to make our farmers be responsible for what comes across the state line will never work. That's a dead thing on hand. Because like I said before, you have the cleanest truck engines. Let's sit in a room and let's logically think about what we can reduce those smog checks. And once every 2 years, you have the most. And if you're coming out with a tier 5, why would we even force a trucking company into an electric truck? An electric truck is $520,000. Very expensive. So again, I would ask that let's revisit the smog check program and its education and what really makes sense. If we have the cleanest trucks and the engine, then I think we should give that back to those farmers or those truckers and independent haulers. Let's give them an opportunity. But to do this to them is a huge increased cost. And I don't think we should be stepping on the line and telling Canada what to do in Mexico and in other states to where now you're going to put the responsibility on my businesses to go out at night in the packing house and go see if that truck has a smog check on it. And we're going to, before you know it, we're not going to ship anything out of this state. And that'll be a total disaster. Then we have to say, now we have a food security system. And now do we take away the authority of California from regulating the food chain? So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Comment? Get your hand up in the front.
Just a question. In relation to the questions that you're putting up before us, is there any feasibility with this where CARB goes back to look at the drawing board instead of mandating something that is nearly next to impossible to achieve?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Advanced Clean Fleets rule is not currently in effect. And so at this point, we don't have current plans to rewrite it. It's certainly a possibility. I think as we are looking at the next few years and looking at how the industry is continuing to evolve and how the infrastructure, as many people have mentioned here, continue to evolve, that's definitely something CARB could look at, but we don't have current plans to do that yet because it's not in effect.
Are you aware that in the motor coach industry right now in California, you cannot buy one bus in the state of California for the next 3 years?
So I was actually going to ask you that question because I was wondering, are you encountering combustion engine availability? Because we have started to see that in some sectors. That is not the fault of Advanced Clean Fleet. It's sort of this kind of complicated interaction between the Advanced Clean Trucks rule and the omnibus combustion rule. And in fact, there's an item at the board later this week that's going to make some modifications to the rule that will, we think, significantly help with engine availability issues on the combustion side. So I encourage you, as you are seeing those effects with dealers, please share that with our staff because we want to make sure that the tweaks are going to address the specific problem.
The tweaks that you're suggesting potentially that we are not aware of, how can we be a part of the conversation to being able to achieve that? I mean, right now, I don't know if anybody from Cummins is here, but I mean, maybe somebody from Cummins could vouch or speak on that. It is currently happening in the state of California right now. Not one bus company can buy buses for the next 3+ years on this pretense. So it is factually happening. There are less and less buses available right now. And while we're navigating this issue, we're in the middle of planning for future services for national events that are going to be momentous in this great state that I absolutely love. But how is that conversation going to continue if we're not being a part of the immediate ability to show how we are part of the solution? We're not the problem. And like I said before, we are 1% of the medium to heavy duty requirement. And I know you mentioned earlier this is related to ag and trucking, but buses, specifically the motor coach industry, is lumped in to the trucking aspect, which is why I keep asking for the exemption. We've asked for the exemption. So yes, I would love the opportunity to work with your staff to being able to actually speaking to the people who are there making the recommendations, because if you're not getting that feedback from our industry as a whole, then how can you speak on something that you may not even know about? No disrespect to anybody on the board, but we're living the responsibility of the mandates that are being put out.
Right. And
it's affecting many people. And I understand everybody's saying, kick the can, et cetera, all these issues, but we really need to have that opportunity to be able to create that dialogue, because as I'm hearing it, you're saying, we're only talking about the availability for funding. we have a problem where we can't even meet the need. Not that we don't want to, it's just we feasibly cannot fiscally not transport people outside of California and beyond, which is what we currently do.
Yeah, and yes, I will have staff give you their
Please.
contact
Thank you.
information. We have been in close dialogue with a lot, the manufacturers themselves and a lot of companies that do purchase engines. It's just, I guess we haven't had some communication
No one's
directly with
talking
the
to
motor
us and
coach
we would
industry.
love the opportunity. Many
So-
are on a Zoom listening to this,
Right.
but I am the only one who could physically come here and I'm honored to be able to sit in front of you all, but I would really like the opportunity to be able to help course correct if there's any way, because there will not be any buses available to purchase. I know we've had to financially put out that money to be able to do so, and it takes a couple of years to even get them. And we, again, do not qualify for any funding. We have to physically work for every dollar and cent for the businesses that we provide.
Okay, I'll have staff give you their contact information and we'll get that dialogue going.
We have a question in the back. Comment in the back and then we'll go. Second round.
Hi, my name is Cosmo Martinez. I'm from the city of Merced, which is about 60 minutes north of here. My question would be, I know that you're talking about ag and trucking right now, but as of now, the state and local governments are still mandated to meet these requirements. And as everybody has said, the infrastructure is not there, the manufacturing isn't there yet. So is there any plan on pulling back that mandate from the state and local governments? Because the equipment isn't there yet. So is there any plan on pulling that back?
We do not have plans on pulling that back. However, I think, this conversation highlights that perhaps our infrastructure exemption process could be a little easier, or a little more streamlined. So we can certainly take a look at that. Because, we do have equipment availability exemptions. We have infrastructure availability exemptions. I think it would be useful to kind of have that dialogue and make sure those exemptions are actually accessible and achievable. So we'll definitely continue to work on that. Thank you.
So Gabrielle Ludwig with the Almond Board of California and also with the Almond Alliance on behalf of them. I just want to reiterate, the theme you've been hearing in terms of non-financial incentives, you really need to look at regulations are real costs. You've heard it from the small guys, you hear it from the big guys, it's across the board. And the complexity of the regulations. I remember going on a tour 15 years ago for one of the early dairy digesters. And I think they had 12 different agencies they needed to get a permit from. So if you're really looking for incentives that aren't a direct cost, then I think really sitting down and looking not just what's in ARB's purview, but looking across the whole board for these various parts of the infrastructure, what's needed and what are the regulatory costs or hurdles and what can be done, if anything, about that. And looking at it from the big guys and what needs to happen there. But then also, as you're hearing now, is, and I can vouch for, I don't think the state really understands that the level of regulation makes it harder and harder for smaller guys to do business, because you cannot afford a human being just to keep track of all the regulations and being in compliance with it. I don't care if that's whether you're a 40-acre grower or a 3-trucking company. And even the private sector, I see it in the sustainability space. All the big companies are working with the big growers because they can get consistency there. So I'm just saying some thought really needs to be given. How can we meet the overall goal, but everything we do as humans has a trade-off, everything. And how do we look at the trade-offs between what all these regulations are trying to achieve and the larger goals? How do we balance that better? Because that has been it's a real cost.
Thank you. Other comments? Now we can move on to the next prompt. I'll give it one last chance here. I guess I do have a question. Many folks, as I've mentioned, offered suggestions around training and recognition. Just wondering if anyone wants to go a little deeper on what they mean by recognition or any follow-up thoughts on the training specifically. So, yeah.
Hi there, Elizabeth Perez, as I mentioned, from Native American Energy Services Company and from Norfolk Rancheria. What I meant earlier about recognition, I think it's important, and I put in marketing. Sell, not really sell. It's talk about the story and success stories geared towards the targeted areas, the intentional targeted areas like rural California, tribes. I think it's important that we see ourselves as part of these stories, success stories. That's whether it's owning a vehicle, what the medium heavy duty vehicle chargers are doing for the community, how many jobs it provided, and what is it doing effectively for the environment? What is it doing for California? I don't see that enough. And I'm in the industry. I've been in the industry for 15 years. And just particularly in this space right now, in the past 5-10 years, I don't see enough of that, to be honest. Now, on the workforce side, as I mentioned earlier, trying to find that pool of people. I'm not sure where all of the dollars are going. I know there was about 15 million that was divvied up between the tribes. I'm not sure if it was rural, but I know within the tribal communities, if I'm looking for somebody particularly and to hire, I can't find those qualified people or even enough people within the tribes, and actually rural too. In Porterville, just trying to find an electrician to do EV or to assist with the transmission connection with SCE or PG&E. There's not a lot of knowledge, and like these are like specific expertise that I'm looking for that it's really difficult to find that here. And when the subcontractors do bid, they're like sometimes in left field, and just not enough awareness. And I want to create more of that opportunity to different subs. So even as subcontractors, that there's that lack of the training and knowledge to even bid on these projects. And I'm going to be honest, and I hate saying this out loud. There's about 8 different subs on the Porterville contract. I ended up choosing a sub from San Diego that came in with the price that had the most knowledge. And it pained me to do that. The last sub we had was out of Bakersfield, and I want to hire locally. It's just difficult to find those subs. It's probably better here in Fresno, I imagine, but particularly like rural parts like Springville, Porterville, all those areas, it's difficult to find. And those are the areas we need the infrastructure, right? And if you're out there, you know, I have an electric vehicle. I drove from San Diego, and sometimes you're in the no man's land, no woman's land, and it's desolate, and I have that range anxiety. So I'm going off track here, but we need more subs that are that can do these projects. Without the trades, you don't have infrastructure. And also without the workforce, we need the workforce to get to the trades. That's how I started, slapping solar on rooftops 17 years ago and then becoming a business owner. We need those trades, and we need that continuing education. Back then, it was part 1 with Obama's era, and there was lots of funding, and I was part of that. I got trained. I got trained up when I got out of the military, and then here I am today. I just don't see that this part 2 cycle, and now we're in another somewhere cycle and there's the funding just isn't there. And I think as a leader in California, we are the leader. We need to get creative and get real on the training so we can continue to move forward. We have all of these goals here in California. I'm just it's a little foggy, hazy to see how we're going to get there. Yeah, there just isn't. And as a developer, and an EV owner, I just don't see enough of the infrastructure and also the training. And I want to be able to hire more local.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions on this prompt? Seeing none, let's move on to the next prompt. Okay. So what are some of the principles for zero emission vehicle program design that it would ensure we don't leave any Californians behind. Thinking about this equity question, making sure we don't leave anyone behind. We'll give folks a few minutes to type out some initial thoughts. All right, seeing some similar themes emerging here. Definitely around outreach and engagement. We've heard a fair amount on that today. Also, focus on infrastructure in some of the disadvantaged low-income communities in particular. A focus on making sure the programs are more targeted with equity in mind. Focus on workforce. Secondary market, thinking about used vehicles as an opportunity for folks with lower incomes to be able to access zero emission vehicles. So I would say most of it though seems to be around outreach and engagement so far, at least from the responses seeing here. And a few people kind of pushing back against the notion that we should be focusing on equity at this point. Or at least questioning, given the nature of the market, et cetera. Like responses are still coming in, so I don't want to cut off anything here. I'll keep the screen up, but definitely want to open up to the floor and just curious to hear if people have further thoughts on this. Yeah, so front row.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maria Reese. I'm Associate Director of Outreach and Policy with the Central California Asthma Collaborative. We've been involved in clean transportation work for quite a while, but I myself have been doing the work with CCAC for about 5 years. I myself have sat down and actually done applications with residents to submit for the EV incentives and EV rebates, and even like the SoCal, Edison and PG&E after purchase rebates. This comment is done kind of with the assumption of like there's, like infrastructure, which we know has been kind of a heavy topic right now, but some of the comments that I would like to bring to the table is in working with a lot of the communities that we serve, and working class people, a lot of them are not in a position like ourselves where we have 9 to 5s, where we have evenings to ourselves where we can get things done. Some people work graves, some people work swing. So when it comes to trying to get a hold of like, in the past, like program staff, it's been very hard because they close. And I know towards like the end of the lifespan of CVRP, their hours were very much reduced. I think it was like 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. So not super accessible to the people that we serve that don't have 9 to 5s. So definitely after hour services would be amazing to the communities that we serve. Another thing that's been kind of reiterated a lot of times here is like definitely language accessibility. That's definitely something that we have experienced here in the San Joaquin Valley, but also we've expanded our services north of Sacramento, and that's also something that we've encountered in the past. Another thing is I feel like we need to heavily focus on relationship building with vehicle manufacturers and dealerships, because the state programs will train dealerships, but there is a high turnover rate when it comes to dealerships. My father worked at dealerships for over 25 years, so I kind of know how the business works. But just ensuring that people are knowledgeable, maybe in the same way that we have like, know your rights in your place of employment, we should have maybe like posters or something that we can put at all dealerships where it lists like the types of incentives that are available that residents can qualify for. We've had, residents in the past come in with incentives with past programs, and then the dealership will tell them like, oh, we're not going to take them. Like, we don't accept that here, or you have to purchase a clean coat in order to use the incentive. And so they try to capitalize on the fact that, these low income disadvantaged community residents are trying to purchase a vehicle and they're trying to upsell them things. So just like heavily focusing on that engagement with the dealerships and the manufacturers as well. Those are just kind of some of the things that I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And on that, I definitely would say that training the GMs instead of sales managers or dealership workers would be really beneficial. We do even see that high turnover in managers, but typically the GMs will work there for decades at a time. And I think if we're holding the dealership GMs accountable, you'll get better results than just having them train 1 or 2 staff members on that. And again, because they get to a point where they'll actually just turn away clients that we have, even if they are a registered dealership, the client has their award packet and everything is ready to go. They will turn them away simply because they don't want to work with them. And then if we're reporting that back to you, being able to hold the GM accountable, like, we trained you, you agreed to this, you signed up for this, why are your people behaving this way? I think will make a really big difference, instead of it just being a salesperson that's there for like a year, leaves, and then, we're kind of just trying to on the fly train some random salesperson so that we can help our community.
I'm so glad you said that, because when we were promoting the EV infrastructure that we just installed, actually this was last November. Last November of last year. And it was the heavy medium duty vehicles that we're promoting, and also EV infrastructure. I was in Tulare, Bakersfield, Visalia, and I'm not going to say which dealerships, but I was kind of like undercover boss, going in there and promoting the different programs, and said, hey, come out, we'll have an EV car show. I'm from Fresno, I like cars, right? We like car shows around here. And I thought it'd be cool to do that and making it fun, and they could have a booth, and it was no cost to the dealer. And there was prizes and making it fun for the, the local community. It was open to everybody in Central Valley. So we did a lot of promotion. And there was about 3, maybe 4 dealerships that said, yeah, we don't do that here. We don't, they have EV vehicles. And they're like, yeah, we're not part of that program. And some of the guys just laughed. They just they didn't care. It was so weird. It's a different, we know we're a little different here in the Valley, right? So, it's a different culture here. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's training, awareness. I'm not sure, but I like that idea of having a poster of some sort, maybe from the state. If they're getting money for these incentives, then there needs to be something out there saying that this is what we do as a dealership. I like that idea.
Right. Other thoughts on what we can do to make sure we're not leaving any Californians behind?
Thank you, Chris Shimoda. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what's going on in a lot of the industries that are going to be regulated entities, presumably for some of the regulatory proposals that may come in the future on zero emissions. If folks did not see the news, a 38-year-old company who does roughly 10% of the volume at the Port of Oakland just declared bankruptcy, went out of business. Hundreds of jobs impacted. Did mention in the comment back to the prompt that it's important to understand who the trucking industry also applies to the agricultural industry, who these industries are. Working class, majority, minority, very slim profit margins. I have heard some of the statistics coming out of the ag community about the dollars for compliance per acre and how they've grown over the years. That is just simply shocking. Trucking has been in a rate downturn for going on 3 years now. I think the straw that broke the camel's back for this particular company was the uncertainty brought on by the tariff discussions have really cratered volumes at a time where, unfortunately, a lot of folks went out and pre-bought capacity, had a lot of loans on their books due to that fact at the time where the volume sort of fell off a cliff and there weren't any containers to move. And so that is under current conditions without, full speed ahead, zero emission vehicle implementation, which from a cost basis goes from, new internal combustion engine is expensive, but new zero emissions is through the roof. And so really focusing on a couple of principles moving forward. Number one, just going back to implementability. I think that what you'll hear from most folks in the industry when you talk about this period that we've come out of with the prior regulations was we didn't even know how we were ever going to meet those mandates to begin with. I think the commenter with the bus company sort of summed it up pretty well with her commentary today. Number two is really refocusing on use cases and duty cycles where the economics are going to be positive in the nearer term. Have seen some good data around falling prices for like class 4 and below zero emission vehicles, where not surprisingly, the uptake is the strongest nationwide, likely due to that more positive economics of those vehicles. And so just a reminder again that the trucking industry, the ag industry, we don't just get to pass through whatever costs are imposed by the state. Largely, we're what's known as rate takers. Our customers are the ones setting sort of the terms of the market. And, with respect to being able to absorb those costs and pass them through to the consumer, which, quite frankly, I think you've heard from some commentators today, cost of living is no surprise. You all, I know for the most part of California residents, you're feeling the pinch just the same as everybody else. To the extent that we could pass those costs along to the consumer, that gets reflected for, let's say in the trucking industry alone, but the other parts of the systems that is the supply chain, into the costs of groceries, into the cost of housing, into the cost of, one of the facts that shocked me when I got into the logistics industry. Hospitals, they receive truckloads of equipment every single day for procedures that they're going to perform within the next roughly 48 to 72 hours. It's literally in every piece of a household spend is the cost of transportation. And so just something to keep in mind, again, as Californians are really feeling the pinch of ever spiraling cost of living and affordability, that getting this right moving into the future as the state tries to attain its goals, you really got to focus on strong economics, what sectors are ready to go, how you can hypercharge those sectors with incentives and good policy on infrastructure. But that's really going to need to be a core focus moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Other comments on this prompt? In the front.
Hi again, Winola from CCAC. Just wanting to also echo some of the statements that were just made, especially in regards to finances. As we all know, California is a little bit different when it comes to finances. A lot of people assume that Californians make a lot of money, the quote unquote California poor. So I think maybe looking to see if we can shift some of our incentive programs to go with like state level federal funding or like state level, basing it off of that rather than the federal, just because I know a lot of people assume that just because you make X amount of dollars, that means you have X amount of money. When we all know, again, that's currently not true, especially with inflation, things are changing. So the dollar is not carrying as much as it used to, like even a year ago now. I think it's like $100K now, you need an extra $24,000 or $24,000 to make the same amount of money that you were making literally last year. So I think making sure that those regulations are also a little bit improved, maybe going off of that number. Again, targeting our rural tribal communities. Again, I feel like a lot of this is for them or needs to be for them because they are often the ones that are often left behind and last thought of. Just reiterating that again, because if you want people to adopt, you have to make sure you're targeting everyone in each area of California. And I feel like, again, the Central Valley is one of those places where we're seeing the adoption, but we're not also seeing as much as we could because, again, people are still thinking like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. It's too much work, things like that. And always education. We're going to keep on saying it, but education is so important. If you want people to be on board with this, you have to spread the message and you have to make it simple enough for them to understand what they're going to gain, not what they're going to lose by changing. So those are the things I really would like to emphasize.
Right. Thank you. So I want to move away from these formal prompts. I have a few additional specific questions I wanted to pose to the group. Some of which were relayed to me by some of the agency staff as feedback they were hoping to get from these outreach sessions. And then we'll leave a little time just for sort of open comment. If there's anything anyone wants to mention, recommend, or questions they want to share that we haven't otherwise covered, we'll leave a little time here for that as well. So in terms of a specific question, and I think it's related to the other topics we've covered, and some people have brought this up, but just to see if there's anyone in the room here who operates a fleet of vehicles or related equipment. The question is, we'd love to hear from you. What is the number one consideration for you in making a shift to zero emission options? What government action could potentially help make that consideration easier? So if there's any fleet operators in the room who want to answer that question.
Again, my name's Dirk. I'm with Kimberly Farms. We're one of the largest egg producers in the state of California. The biggest issues that we have, aside from the fact that I cannot find an EV that'll run all day with our current equipment setup, currently I'd have to triple my truck fleet just to keep up with current demand. Having live animals, we have to keep up with animal husbandry laws, and that opens up a whole can of worms. On top of that, just load rating is another biggie. Even if I go biggest battery to try to maximize the truck usage throughout the day, that cuts my load down by about 15,000 pounds. When you start talking about feed trailers, I mean, we're limited to 80,000 pounds. Even the extra 2,000 pounds that everybody was talking about allowing us to go over, it doesn't make up the loads that I would lose throughout the day to keep up with our current demand. And that's one of the biggies. And our roads aren't the greatest in this state, and they keep getting worse. And adding more and more weight to this stuff doesn't seem feasible to me either. Specifically, like rural country roads, they're not designed to handle anything over 80,000 pounds, especially continuous use like this. So that's one of the biggies is the weight consideration, plus, really the durability. We're getting into harvest season now too with all the ag stuff. You have a limited time to pull crop out. I mean, these are all factors that play into a lot of this stuff. So reliability is a biggie for a lot of people. The weight rating is a biggie for a lot of people because that's going to increase the loads and the amount of trucks that are going to be on the road. We have a ton of trucks on the road already. I don't think that's something we want to balloon out of proportion. And then lastly is the cost. I mean, I just now I can give, in the last 8 years that I've been at my current job, just to maintain our tier 4 engines, our cost is tripled just in maintenance fees. And that's with your current setup that we have to run. DEF has been detrimental to a lot of our stuff. It's very toxic. It eats a lot of the components in the exhaust system. We lose sensors daily. And that's one of the biggest things. All the manufacturers run all the same sensors. They all come from basically three manufacturers. They all have the same problems. And it's a lot of downtime that we lose, and it's costing us a lot in production and a lot in maintenance fees.
So just to follow up on that, is there a government action that you'd like to see put in place that might help fix some of these challenges?
At this point, I don't think there is a government action that could fix any of this. It's technology. In my opinion, I mean, I started back in 2006 working for Caterpillar, and that's when all of this started coming into play. The first set of DPFs that were brought out, we had a lot of problems with those. Especially speaking from industry experience, that was the thing that we saw all the time. When those came out, we saw one of those trucks a day minimum. And it was for plugging, the filtration systems. I mean, we had to learn a lot. It's not like a catalytic converter on a car. Diesel engine's completely different. So yeah, the technology's there. DEF, in my opinion, has been a Band-Aid to try to get the NOx numbers down. I mean, you go into any truck stop, go look at the DEF pumps. It's a mess. And like I said, highly corrosive. We still don't know long-term effects of actually running this through an exhaust system and putting it into the atmosphere. Yeah, at this point, I don't know what the best option is. 100% electric vehicle, I don't think is feasible in the state either. There has to be some better flexibility options. Technology needs to catch up with what you guys are trying to do. And like I said, I'm seeing this from the industry standard, and that's amongst all the people that I talk to, that's the biggest thing with trying to adopt into the the electric vehicle thing is we don't know long-term effects. We don't know how long any of this stuff is going to last. I can tell you right now with a lot of the roads that we drive down, these trucks aren't going to last. The added weight to these things, the brakes that we're going to go through, I mean, they're going to beat the crap out of themselves just going down the roads with all the potholes and stuff.
Thank you. Anyone else operates a fleet? And see two hands in the back.
Good afternoon. Yeah, Chad Nishan with Valley Pacific out of Stockton, California. We operate about 120 trucks across the state, mostly from Bakersfield north up to the Oregon border, also over on the Central Coast. Like the gentleman said here from Gemperly, on our side, it's duty use cycle, right? And just how much equipment would be required to perform the same amount of work that we're currently doing, as well as the additional trucks on the road. Because if you lose 10,000 pounds of payload per truck, right? 200,000, just like say 200,000 pounds of payload took 4 trucks to haul before. If you could do 50,000, well, if you only have 40,000 pounds of payload, now you have one more truck on the road in addition to the additional fleets, trucks you have to have within your fleet just to accomplish the same task, because you have the downtime of charging on a zero emission vehicle. We've gone out and adopted, we've gone on it and we've worked with San Joaquin Valley APCD quite a bit and have CNG trucks in our fleet now. They've done phenomenal. Cummins has done a fantastic job with their new 15-liter engine. I think that's a great solution. Again, to the guy from Gimperley here, engineers are incredibly intelligent people, right? You get a group of them together. There are some really smart people in the world, and they'll figure out how to get the levels down, right? And I think they've done that to this point, and we've seen that just with the PM decrease over the years throughout the various iterations of the diesel engines. But it comes at a cost. It comes at a significant cost on maintenance and the sensors and the DPF and the DEF edition. And so again, I'm going to go back and say like Cummins and the engine manufacturers have done a fantastic job of meeting the spec, but it has come at a cost to the fleet operators. And I can't remember who said it earlier. Somebody said it's going to roll down and increase cost overall, right? There's not enough margin in the work to absorb that cost, and so we have no choice but to push it down. So yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said, duty use cycle, and so what government regulation or how can we get help? I think it's understanding where a zero emission vehicle can fit and where it can, and unfortunately, in my opinion, there's a lot of heavy duty cycles that it does not fit within. There are some situations that it does fit. But I think on the maybe light and medium duty, it's a much cleaner fit, right? But our trucks run, our transports, I'm sure like Gimperley's the same way. And, we get trucks, they run 140 to 150,000 miles a year. I mean, they're on the road 16, 18 hours a day, probably 6 days a week. So there's just no room in that for charging, unfortunately. So but yeah, that's it. You have any questions for me for a follow-up before I pass the mic back?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that opportunity for me to ask a question.
Yeah.
Which is, what government action would help in your mind to address, at least mitigate some of these challenges?
Yeah, I think Dr. Randolph stated earlier, right? It's you have to be careful with exemptions because people will abuse them, but it's making a clear path and making those exemptions easier to obtain when they are applicable, when it's necessary to obtain them. So I think that that's important. And then again, I also think going back and looking at alternatives that maybe aren't all the way zero emission, but are really a great secondary opportunity from where we were and where we have been, right? And like understanding that we've made a tremendous amount of progress to this point. I don't know if you ever when do you call good enough, right? Like when do you get there? I don't know. Maybe you never do. Maybe you're always striving for better. But I think at some point the towel is dry, right? You wrung the towel out and the towel is dry and you're not going to wring any more out of it. I kind of wonder if we're almost to that point at this time. Like, do we start looking at other source points? Like what other source points are out there? Like we've just made such tremendous strides with the diesel engine. In my opinion, I'm just one guy, but that's my opinion.
Oh, thank you. All right,
thank you.
Another comment here.
Good afternoon, Cody Turner, Shasta College up in Redding, California in Shasta County. I came down today because I'm unable to make the meeting in Sacramento on Wednesday. I am the director of transportation. I have 9 buses, coaches that transport our athletics and educational programs. I have a fleet of between medium and heavy duty vehicles that's over 50 vehicles. We have a logging program, we have log trucks, we have heavy equipment programs, we have off-road, we have, you name it, we almost probably have it. What the lady up there said about not being able to buy a coach, that's absolutely true. I was at MCI, Motor Coach Industries Service Center in Hayward on Wednesday last week. They have 7 brand new buses sitting there that they can't sell. I bought one last year on an exemption through the Air Resources Board. Very grateful for that. It was $715,000 with sales tax. And if I were to buy the zero emission version of that, it would have been $1.3 million pre-tax. The bus I purchased has a range of 1,000 miles. The electric version has a range of 220 miles. Now, my district, my community college district serves 10,000 square miles. We're very rural Northern California. We come down here to Fresno at least 4 times a year for athletics and educational programs. I took a group of high schoolers to Yosemite for a week last summer. If we were to have a zero emission vehicle that's currently available, those trips would have not been possible or been multiple week trips. The government action that I think would really just benefit us is not necessarily an exemption, but more of a skilled approach for rural areas. What is feasible in Bakersfield or Fresno or Sacramento or the Bay Area is not necessarily feasible in Trinity County that has one stoplight in the entire county. If we have a skilled approach like that, because I want to do right, I want to keep this state clean, I want to have good air. I saw that today coming down. We have a wildfire in Shasta County and our air is better than it is here right now. And I want that clean air, but I also want to be able to continue to operate for our educational programs, for our sports teams, for athletics, for our community. Because if we have if at some point we were restricted to be zero emission only, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. In that 220-mile range, there are 2 colleges that we could get to with that range. Our in conference is down to Fresno for most of our athletic sports. So it's sad to see that the regulation, if that were to continue, and I know Advanced Clean Fleet is suspended except for government agencies, which sucks being a government agency for that right now. But if that were to continue to roll out, that would be unfortunate for our students. When it comes to infrastructure, we have a 1.2 megawatt solar project in one of our large parking lots that was done in 2019, and PG&E still hasn't hooked it up. There are K-12 school districts that have got bus replacement grants through the Air Resources Board to buy electric buses that get told by PG&E they can't charge their buses in the middle of the day because they don't have enough room on the grid. So they're using their electrics in the morning, and then their drivers have to come in after lunch, pre-trip their diesels, and then do their diesels to take the students home. So like I said, I understand the exemption process. I went through it with one of my vehicles. It has a faulty EGR. Detroit doesn't make it anymore, and I'm waiting for them to hopefully make it again. And I was able to file an exemption. I've been through the process. It being a little more streamlined would be nice. It took about 2 months, but I also understand they shouldn't be necessarily handed out to everybody who asks. But just maybe some sort of a skilled approach, because we have the low pop counties for the ACF, something similar to that with the zero emission vehicles until that infrastructure is actually there. And let alone the cost of offsetting PG&E. I don't know if anyone here has PG&E at their home, but I do. And my electric bill is 61% of my mortgage payment in the summertime. So.
Yeah, appreciate the comment. I'm just curious, I want to follow up. You mentioned you went to the lot at Hayward and there were 7 vehicles that couldn't be sold. Can you those are zero emission vehicles you're talking about, or what
no, they're diesel. They have a Cummins X12 in them. The MCI, they're manufactured in Canada and they don't necessarily have dealers, they have service centers. So they were brought in on a trip permit and they're sitting there waiting to be sold, but they're waiting on exemptions for them.
Thank you. Any other fleet owners, operators, or related equipment with the story? Yeah.
At one point or another in our fleet, we had about 50 some buses. And because of all the mandates, we got down to nearly half that amount. What we would be asking for would be similar to an exemption, something that would be able to facilitate getting people to the long distances that they travel, because we don't have anything in the rural communities that we service right now. The schools that we transport on a daily basis and the students that we transport for K through 12 education, private institutions, and then public as well, would not be able to get to their destinations in a safe manner or at all. With the manufacturers itself, they cannot sell us anything right now in California because of the mandates and the way that they are structured. So many of the operators in California currently that are small businesses, minority owned, just like myself, women that are trying to do the right thing in the state and to be able to facilitate providing services and jobs to the community, are not able to continue in the path that is currently set. I don't know that there's ever going to be a time within the mandate itself to be able to meet that requirement the way that it is currently set up for specifically our industry. And I know we're lumped in with trucks, which makes it a little bit of a difficulty in being able to compare the two. So what we would be asking for would be more of a approach that would be feasible for those that are low use, but in those carriers that are currently able to travel across United States with the federal authority, USA, across United States, Mexico, and Canada should be able to have an ability to be exempt from following the mandate accordingly, and being able to still be able to purchase the equipment that we need to be able to facilitate all the upcoming events that are coming into California. The way that it is right now, there's going to be very few companies left across United States. Because of COVID, we were decimated completely. We are all small businesses. We get no funding from the federal government or the state. And within our community itself, we don't get anything. So again, it is going to affect many people across United States. As I understand right now, there is some 200 plus companies that may be able to facilitate coming into California. If we continue down the path that we're in right now, we are going to be competing against the carriers that are out of state that have figured out a way to come in and operate against us, because they're going to be the only ones that are going to be able to. And I don't know what the path is with that, but any help that we can get from the board administration to be able to really see the economic impact and who we're transporting, to be able to help them to be able to get to their destinations would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Any final comments, thoughts from any fleet owners, operators? All right, I want to thank those who did volunteer with their perspective experiences. Another specific question I wanted to ask folks, and this has come up a little bit, actually it's a fair amount in the discussions to date, but wanted to have a more focused discussion on it. In what ways can government processes become more helpful and supportive of our large scale zero emission vehicle goals? So what ways can government processes be more helpful or supportive? And like I said, a number of you have mentioned some specifics, but wanted to give an opportunity to just throw that question out there. If anyone wants to mention something that hasn't been discussed yet, or put a finer point on previous examples. Any takers on that one?
I'll be quick. I heard it earlier regarding the utility companies doing their part to move, building out their transmission lines and connectivity. At Tule River, it took 2.5 years. And that's just one project. At Santa Isabel in San Diego, we put together that project in 2021, 22. It's still, as far as I know, not connected. There's just so many barriers and hurdles to get in. And that's rural areas in California. So I'm sure it's not just tribal, it's everywhere.
Thank you. Any other examples people want to share? Otherwise, we do have the comments that have come in so far, some specifics, but I want to make sure that providing space for any other additional thoughts. All right. I'll have a couple more specific questions and then we can open it up. And if we're done early, that's okay too. So question around policy gaps. Are there any areas right now where policy is really not involved and engaged in addressing a critical barrier that you're seeing to scaling up zero emission vehicles?
The biggest one I see, I know we keep talking about infrastructure. Everything that I ask about infrastructure, it's always like the user, as far as charging facilities and stuff like that goes. We're now starting to get into a point where we're starting to see that utility companies are having a hard time, keeping up, whether it's trying to get parts to finish the connections or whatnot. What is the state, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but what is the state's goal as far as power production goes? I know there's a big push to do clean energy production, wind and solar, and whatever else you guys are coming up with. But we just shut down a nuclear power plant too, you know, down south. I know there's a cogeneration plant that was shut down in my area a couple years ago. Last I heard too from our local utility company, hydropower is not being considered clean energy until I forget what the percentage was, but they were told that a percentage had to be produced by wind and solar before hydropower is even considered. And that's what I'm looking at is, yeah, it's cool. We can get everything connected, but where's the power going to come from? And then how much is it going to cost us as an end user? Because let's face it, building anything power production related is going to be super expensive, and that cost is going to get passed down to the user no matter what.
I can briefly cover that. You mentioned San Onofre. All of that power has actually been replaced in the system with other resources. And, you know, the CEC and the PUC do a kind of an extensive, they figure out the demand forecast, then they order the procurement to meet that forecast. And so over the years, the state has added quite a bit of solar, wind, and importantly, battery storage, and geothermal. And then of course, extended the life of Diablo Canyon, our last nuclear power plant. So we do anticipate that overall, there'll be enough energy to meet system needs, with a little asterisk around, you know, AI and how that's going to play a role. But for transportation electrification itself, the issue is less about overall system power and more about, in the heavy duty space in particular, more about locations. There's been a lot of conversation about, you know, different communities have different access to power because of either the location of the generation assets or the transmission and distribution system. So the PUC and the CEC have been doing a lot of work, not only to forecast the future demand for transportation electrification, but also to forecast where the specific pockets of additional capacity are needed. And then also one of the areas of progress over the last couple of years that's been positive is more flexibility around interconnections. For instance, there's a large heavy duty vehicle charging station in Bakersfield that PG&E's first response was, we cannot serve this facility. And the developer went back and said, well, what if you serve this amount first and then the rest of the amount in the future? And they were able to work out an agreement that phased in the service for that site. So it used to be that utilities would not consider doing that at all, and that has really changed. So in terms of the power, I think that you know, the utilities, both the publicly owned and the investor-owned utilities, will be able to serve that load writ large. It's really about making sure that it's where people need it, and that it meets the needs of the customers. But this was a big topic when the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation was originally adopted, which was resulted in the infrastructure exemption being included into the reg. And so some of this feedback has been incredibly helpful in thinking about, are there ways we can improve those processes? So thank you.
Yep, comment right there.
So I'm going to go slightly off topic, but some things just got mentioned at the time, and also conversation is hearing earlier. So one of the big issues we face for the energy supply is this new incredible demand from the data centers between AI and cryptocurrency and just the so-called cloud storage. I will say from personal experience, it's frustrating the hell out of me that every time I get an email from Yahoo, it thinks it needs to give me an AI summary of a 2-sentence email. And I asked at the office, because it's like AI kept showing up, like, can I just turn this off and only use it when I want it? I'm like, no, either it's on or off. So there may be some government role in trying to make AI an optional service and not an automatic one, to not have a hell of a lot of wasted energy and water for AI resources that we're not using.
All right, thank you for that comment. So we're approaching the 3.5 hour mark. So I just want to commend everyone's dedication to this topic and your willingness to spend time here to provide input on this important task that these state agency folks here have in terms of recommending a course of action to the governor and by extension, everyone in the state. So I want to conclude with the question prompts and just see if anyone has anything they want to mention that we haven't covered yet. Any idea, thought, question, and just open up the floor a bit, see if there's anything. And if not, we can end this a little earlier than our predetermined 5 o'clock time, which we set without knowing how many people are going to show up. But I think this feedback has been very comprehensive. Yeah, Samir.
Sorry. Keep it quick. I just wanted to first thank the whole panel and then thank all the public members that came here. This has been a very enlightening session, and I really just appreciate the patience and all the great comments. First, I just want to say that a couple of days ago, EPA proposed to find the valley in attainment of the 15 microgram PM standard. And I bring that up because I think when you think about what you're all kind of looking at right now, the real question, at least from my perspective, and again, I'm the Air Pollution Control Officer for the San Joaquin Valley. I reintroduced myself here. The real question is, why is it worth investing in emissions reductions? And when you think about the fact that just 20 years ago, our PM levels were almost double what they are today. We were in the 20s, PM 2.5 on the annual average. We're down below 15. In most parts of the valley are actually well below 15, and we just had to get to that last part of the valley. When you invest in emissions reductions and effective strategies, it does make a difference, right? And so we still have a long ways to go on other standards. There's dates that are coming up, 2024, last year, 2025 or 2030, 2032, 2037. I just want to state for the record that I think as we think about the strategies here in front of us, especially looking backwards and the success that we've had working together, every emission reduction strategy, for the most part, has not been a zero emission strategy that has gotten us to where we are today. Now, we've gotten a lot of reductions from zero emissions transitions. A lot of that's actually happened in the valley. We've been leaders actually in electric trucks, for example, Frito-Lay, PepsiCo, OK Produce, the Watt EV project was mentioned down in Big. That's about less than a half mile from our Bakersfield office. That project, very excited about that. But we have been able to make significant strides through Farmer, through stationary source controls, through the 2010 truck standard, truck and bus regulation. And I think as we think about all of the overlays of where we want to go into the future with the greenhouse gas, the climate impacts, the climate goals, but also overlaying on top of that, the really short-term, the near-term, mid-term goals that we have under the SIPs, we don't have the reductions that we thought we were going to get. With all the challenges at the federal level, with the waiver issues, with the other actions that were taken, the fact of the matter is that, and then obviously with all the infrastructure issues and challenges, which are all opportunities, definitely there's a positive side to that with all the success stories as well. The fact of the matter is that we don't have the luxury of waiting for a long time to get that transition, the emission reductions as needed to meet all of these federal goals. And so I think as a larger comment to our state partners and to all of us here that are working together on these issues, I think that a lot of things can be true at the same time. I think, for example, as we push for zero emissions, and I think there is a logic to the sequence of questions. Started off with zero emissions, then you kind of went into what other things can be done. I think all of it has to be done. And I think that's kind of what I hope, one of my big takeaways here is that, yes, we want to focus on zero emissions. We want the utilities and all the state planners to work with us to figure out how to get the infrastructure built up, how to get residents into electric vehicles. In the valley, by the way, I think 25% was mentioned for new EV purchases. Here, it's closer to 10% actually in the San Joaquin Valley, right? Statewide, it's closer to 25%, but and by the way, that 10% is much bigger than it was, just several years ago. I mean, we partnered with our wonderful CBOs here, and we've got these great equity-focused programs that have turned around basically at 1 to 2% of sales of EVs to where it's at 10% now, but that's well below the rest of the state. So I think the big point here is that we've got to figure out a way to work on the zero emissions priority, figure out those issues while we also focus on farmer, lower dust harvesting, near zero technologies, so that we don't lose major opportunities to reduce emissions by those dates that are critically important while we also transition to zero emissions. And so I think that, this valley is a solution-oriented region. We lead on all these fronts. I just really look forward to working with the state, Chair Randolph, and your amazing team, as well as all the other partners that are here. I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that a lot of the reductions that we were looking for are no longer to be relied upon in these short timeframes. So we have to make those up somehow, and we have to figure out a way to do all of it at the same time.
Well, as I frequently remind folks, when the federal administration repealed the waivers, the 3 waivers that we got, one of those was the omnibus rule, which was a combustion rule. So the federal administration is attacking not only our zero emission progress, but is also attacking progress that we are trying to make, even combustion engines as well. And so it's really important that we are, considering all of the emissions reductions we had identified that we are either have lost or are potentially permanently going to lose. And it is not going to be an easy task to make those emissions reductions back up, to your point. Thank you.
Yeah, comment in the back there.
First, I want to thank Randolph, the entire team, and the agencies that are here today working together. I am not going to let PG&E walk away. PG is not going to get off of this deal, nor is any other utility company, because the rural communities are paying the high cost of power increases continuously. The Sustainability Coalition letter that was sent to the governor on December 19th of 23 had many cities signed on and counties. In those city comments, it said, our cities are not wired to use infrastructure charging stations. If a person has 2 vehicles or a truck in that town, and let's just take Orange Cove, let's take Sultana, let's take Watsonville, let's take Greenville, let's take King City. All of those rural communities, the wiring in their homes cannot handle the infrastructure of a charging station. Many of them cannot because they have a dryer. And that dryer is the only thing they have of that size of power. And I do know, and you have received a letter, Dr. Cliff has received a letter from PG&E telling one of my growers in Sanger, California, the 2 substations that power that part of the valley in this area, Fresno County, wanted to build a juicing plant just outside of Sanger, approved by the county, except for one problem. PG&E wrote them a letter, said it would be 10 years. And this was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, this letter was sent. And you received a copy of the letter. In that letter, it said 10 years before we could even put in the power, but could be generated by a huge generator by the district. It'd have to get permitted. Now, is there natural gas out there? Yeah. They'd have to plumb into that, or it'd be a diesel generator. And they said that they could build the plant, the 2 power plants, if the grower would agree to finance the facility. We're going to pay for a power plant? Forget that noise. Then we'll be in the power business. Let agriculture be in the power business. But what my point is, Madam Chair, is that the utility side had never told the truth to you people, or your staff never got the truth that many of these cities are not equipped to fund the power is not equipped there to charge a truck even. And yet we're making this mandate by 2036, 2035. But I think the utility side has failed. This state has failed the people in producing the real amount of consumption. 1.7 million trucks come in total in California. 1.4 actually are here. 400,000 come in. We estimated to operate those trucks, that 1.4 million trucks on a 4-hour day per day is 10 nuclear plants. 10 nuclear plants like Diablo Canyon. Diablo does 3 million homes. That's what it's powered to do. And when we calculated all the trucks, and then we thought, wait a minute, we got a reefer. We got a TRU reefer. Is that going to run off the same battery? Or are we going to add 4 tons to the reefer unit? Now that takes more power to generate that source of power. But I am very disappointed in my years with the utilities of providing power to our rural communities. The wiring is a 1950, 1960, 1970 wiring in homes. And then when they say, oh, we'll just do that. And when they can't provide the power for my packing house, 185 jobs in the town of Sanger, a great income,
Okay.
a great level.
No, thank you for that comment. I think it takes us back full circle. We'd start off talking a lot about infrastructure needs, comments duly noted. I'm just going to go ahead and see if anyone on the panel has any closing thoughts before I wrap up. Anything you want?
I just wanted to acknowledge that I did see some comments around, planning for ZEV repair technicians, EV repair technicians. It's certainly a topic that's a very popular topic among the Bureau of Automotive Repair and a lot of our stakeholders in the automotive repair industry. So if that's a topic that you're interested in contributing to, tune into our advisory group meetings. Would love to hear some more input and more ideas on how to make sure we're ready to repair these vehicles and make sure consumers are getting treated right after they purchase and adopt their EVs.
Thank you, Clayton. All right, so just in terms of next steps here, as I mentioned, if anyone does have further thoughts leaving this meeting, July 29th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Also, written comments can be shared on the public docket online. So if you go to the ZEV forward page at the resources board, you could submit written comments there as well. Well, a lot of work went into this hearing today, so I want to just thank all the agency staff, Andrew Martinez, Michelle Buffington, and just to name a few. Our IT folks were super helpful in getting all this together, so a lot of work to make this relatively seamless. And I just want to thank all of you for taking a big chunk of your day today to come out and provide this really valuable input. And we look forward to staying in touch and wish you all safe travels wherever you're off to next, and keeping in touch on this process. Thank you all.
You are the only participant in the conference.